3, 2, 1. Welcome, connoisseurs of fine common cardboard, to today's live stream and to this Let's Chat with my good friend, not Brad Drac V, you imposter. This is my good friend Scarecrow. Apologize the mislabeling here. I've got 12 interfaces for 15 different amazing people. We've got an imposter up in the house. This is Scarecrow, a member of the Rules Committee for Pauper Commander PDH, and a professional human being, as I've recently discovered, having actually met this fine person in Detroit. So Scarecrow, really, really stoked to have you here for your second time on the Common Connoisseurs. How you doing today, bud?
Happy to be here. I thought the Brad joke was just because of the Orzhov shenanigans going on.
You know, it's perfect. I actually had this thought earlier today that I have labeled Brad the Orzhov Pontiff, but you know what? There can be two. There can be two. There's multiple members of the Obsidat Council, so I think you're just one of them. So yeah, you've definitely cemented yourself in PDH history by your placement at that event, and with a commander that I have long felt was not just underplayed, but just really insane. And I think you showed
back in the days of like Crash's tier list. I remember like I was the one casual person pointing at
totally
Vizkopa, and you were like the one competitive person that was like, yeah, listen to him, and like we would kind of like bounce things off each other.
Oh yeah, dude, and it's really only gotten better, hasn't it? Like we got so much support recently through very innocuous and random pieces of tech that
like,
just suddenly it's like
egg that gains life. It's fine.
Bingo. So yeah, now I just want to let everybody know I really appreciate having you all here, and if you do want to check out more of our content, ways to support it, we're going to thank the patrons here maybe midway or at the end, but make sure to take a look at patreon.com/common-connoisseurs if you're interested in supporting us at a $2, $5, $10, $20, or $50 level to make sure this content keeps coming. We got Kunks 9990. My brain is smooth as an ice rink right now, folks. I was just telling Scarecrow that I spent the weekend in British Columbia having a great time there. And so it's a long drive back, had a really intense week. I won't go into the details, but the last 2 weeks have been emotionally very intense. It's a miracle that we're doing a live stream here at all, and you know a little bit about that. So anyways, Kunk says, how much is entry into the Vizkopa Cabana? You know, the only price, Kunks, is your soul.
I mean, in my head, whenever I was rewatching the stream from RIW and I saw that, I was imagining like Vizkopa's the bartender, just like making drinks. And I mean, it's a beachfront thing. You know, people have money, but maybe not that. They're not carrying that much around, so it's probably like $10 a drink.
Yeah, and that's perfect because when we were in Detroit, were making some of the most phenomenal mixed drinks. I think everybody was really impressed with that, and I definitely enjoy them. I don't really drink, and as I mentioned to you, but I do enjoy a really well-made piece of art, and that's exactly what you had. So I'm going to take a moment here. Clay has reminded me. Just so you know, Clay, I do know that the interface is off. We were just joking about that. We've got two Orzhov Pontiffs up in this bitch, and one of them is Scarecrow. The other is Brad from the PDH pod, which you should check out their podcast if you haven't. They're the longest running PDH podcast out there, and they make great content. So I'm just going to download that interface while we talk. But let's get started, and maybe while I design this thing and upload it into here, you can tell us a little bit about your experience in Detroit at RIW Hobbies cPDH 1K, which was fucking lit. But tell us about your experience coming in, meeting everybody. Give us the rundown.
So literally everyone that came, Clay organized this Airbnb, and we all piled in, and we were all just walking in, and like none of us have ever met in person before. Some of us have heard each other's voices, some not, and everyone was just kind of filing in one by one, and we would like walk in through the door like, am I in the right place, and look around and like, I don't know, who are you, and just it was awkward at first, but just like as soon as it was like, oh, you're Scarecrow, you're Alcadron, you're like, everyone just kind of like melded in, and just any tension or awkwardness was gone like that. It was so much fun because we've all been just talking with each other so much for years at this point. So just fell in with each other immediately, just like ran all over the place, doing a few errands, like getting everyone settled into the Airbnb, and then just like out came the cards all of a sudden, just bam, they're everywhere. Tables are downstairs side by side, go, go, go. And yeah, like I think alignment is a term you use a lot, Ryan, and that's really what it felt like. Was we all just had a singular purpose for the weekend, getting to know each other and playing some games together. And even away from the tournament, that's what the experience was just PDH all the time. And it was so much fun.
Dude,
like so much of us,
a nauseating amount of magic. Like from Friday when I arrived there through like 2:30 in the morning, waking up at 9, playing Magic from 10:30, 11:30, maybe noon, all the way through 10:30, followed by playing Magic till like 3 in the morning.
Not all of us are like you and have thriving local PDH scenes. I just moved last year, and I still need to try to cultivate one here. So a lot of us have bottled it up. So we gotta let it out somewhere. Right?
Yeah, dude, you gotta let your freak flag fly, and you know PDH is the best format of Magic, and so getting out there and spreading the good word is awesome. I only say that jokingly because really there's a lot of great ways to play and enjoy Magic, and I don't want to dunk on those things, but I really love that PDH. That PDH is so accessible to so many different people from so many different angles, and our gathering was such a perfect example of that. I was playing games with Alcadron legends like Alcadron, like fucking Rough Again, with Gator, with just so many different people, with Bobby, with Clay. I got to meet Clay, the dude I've been working with closely for like 2 years now for the first time. He picked me up from the airport after I spent 2 hours trying to get this cabbie to try and pick me up. It was awful.
So I actually met 3 of like the first people that I remember having real in-depth conversations with about PDH.
Wow.
Like, so my entry was through Reddit, and Rough Again was like the main mod at the time, and Alcadron was like one of the really active people in the subreddit. And then there was a third guy named Birdtrap that I was also like talking with a lot back then, who just had a little more Derek style builds, where it was very like game action intensive. Maybe not the most powerful thing you could see.
Pretty theory based.
Like, yes, but like it still was very solid. Like he was very focused on Flicker and Great Flicker before we had as much like saturation of those effects.
Yeah. Before we had like Initiative, probably potentially before we had Monarch, right? Because you've been doing this for a long time.
This was 2018.
Oh wow. Okay, so I didn't realize your entry into this was more recent. That's really cool. That's awesome. Wow.
So I built 2 proto PDH decks back in 2016, 2017.
Okay.
With with 2 uncommon legends. They were made to fight each other in 1v1.
Sweet.
I didn't, and then it was 2 years, year and a half, 2 years later when I discovered that, hey, this is an actual format, and dove right in.
Yeah. So you arrived in Detroit, and you got to meet all these people just like me that you've been working with super closely for like 5 years now. So you got to meet Al, you got to meet Rough Again.
Was Birdtrap, the guy that I was talking with that I haven't talked with in like 2 years or something, even online. He was one of the locals that was at the tournament, and I got to meet. He was the Risen Reef player.
No fucking way.
Yeah.
Dude, okay, so Birdtrap, by the way, that I didn't realize that was their name. I got to play a game with them. Unfortunately, the game was kind of sullied a little bit by some weird non-competitive stuff, but it was still really, really fun, and he was a great sport. He came up to me afterwards and he was like, I'm sorry, like I know you flew from a long ways to come here. but yeah, Birdtrap did great. He was in the top 4 with a deck that, man, it's just very heavy value. I mean, Risen Reef is a proven contender in Modern with Modern 4-color Omnath Elementals type stuff.
I played it in Standard during my brief.
It's strong. Yeah, I mean, it's kind of like Thrasios, but you get to do it lots of times, and it only takes you casting spells. Like, it's like Gretchen. It's like you either put the land into play or you just draw the card. It's strong. So
good value either way.
Yeah, for sure. So, okay, so you arrived, you met all these people. Same for me. I got in a little bit later here. I was blown away just meeting everybody. That moment where you're like, I've met you digitally over webcam. Is this you? And then people that I hadn't met over webcam, getting to know their faces and their voices, and immediate companionship with everybody.
It was even more overwhelming for you too. Like, I came in when there were only like 4 or 5 other people.
I arrived and there were fucking 15 people, dude. Yeah, and not only that, but I arrived after like a delayed flight, 2 hours at the airport, another half hour in transportation. I just gotten some pretty heavy news, like right as I was getting, right as I was leaving the car to get there, and I was like emotionally very tapped. The person next to me on the plane, when they landed, learned that like one of their best friends had died, and I was just like, dude, what am I? It was really intense. It's honestly, I told a couple people it's a fucking miracle I made it to that event at all. I'd had a week of work that was just awful. My employer isn't the best, and so it's been a bit of a hostile environment there. So when I got there, I was just like, oh God, there's a shoulder to lean on. And everybody was just very welcoming and very kind, and we played a lot of good Magic. So, all right, so there's that. We were in the same Clay. Big shout out, of course. Give a bunch of claps in chat to Clay, who really, everybody has a different role to play. My dad's got a song where he says, all God's creatures got a place in the choir. Some sing low and some sing higher. And Clay is in the background making so many subtle things happen that make this format a better place. So make sure, reach out to him, DM him, thank him for his work, because sometimes these people in the background, they don't get nearly as much credit as they deserve. You're one of those people too. For a long time, you're just kind of in the background, and people like rage at the RC, like rah 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 rah, and you're just like, I'm just trying to help, So it's important that we really give thanks and express gratitude. Gratitude is very free, and it's a good feeling. So do it. It feels nice to thank people and have them be thankful that you did so. So we get there. We show up at the event the next day. The event was held in a Chinese buffet place next door, which was awesome, where they had unlimited tacos, and they were very good tacos. They had like nacho making materials too. Yeah.
They had like 3 different meat selections, multiple kinds of veggies, and
all
cheese.
Marinated to perfection. Like,
it was good.
Okay,
I did some mix and matching. It was great.
As you should. Yeah. Okay, and you brought Vizkopa Guildmage to the tournament. I gotta say, when I heard that, I was like, fuck yeah, dude. Because nobody's been playing that deck. It was basically my buddy Bobby, goes by King Great. His channel, which is no longer in operation, but he's still around. He lives in my Bellingham community, is called The Popper Guy. Really innovative deck builder, just a good human. And he and I worked a bunch on Vizkopa for a long time, but I was frankly just occupied with different stuff, And this is a thing we run into in this space all the time. Just because a commander isn't being played.
Where I was.
What's that?
That's exactly where I was.
Yeah, just on different stuff.
Familiar home ground for me, and that's part of why I took it, because I knew out of all my decks, it was the one that I could get closer to competitive.
Yeah.
With the least effort.
Yep.
So I had a lot of stuff going on right before we went, so that's how that's kind of why I didn't try anything else out either.
Well, and it's sometimes people ask in the common connoisseurs, why does this not see play? Does anybody play this, that, this, that, and the other thing? And because we don't have a ton of people yet playing in this format, it's still relatively small comparatively. It's not that a commander isn't playable or isn't good when it isn't seeing play. It's that the people playing are playing different things. And
we don't have enough pilots to saturate the meta because we have more decks that are playable than we have pilots by a large margin. And I think that's just going to be, I think that's going to become more and more evident. I think 5 years from now, the meta will be so incredibly broad that
it's going to be almost impossible to metagame, because think about this. I am seeing people putting out lists of Armix Rebek, and it's like,
okay, yeah.
Those
I remember that being something I was theory crafting when they were
right.
spoiled.
I mean, it just goes to show those commanders were released a long time ago. You know,
Yeah.
even like Ketis Dargo had like a little bit of meme sort of play, and it
Yep. But
took.
now it's getting serious.
Yep, it took the meta evolving. It took more sources of red card advantage, like your Ren's Resolve, Reckless Impulse, you know, Boros Synthesizer, or not. Sorry, Synthesizer has a different name. It's Experimental Synthesizer. We got more Monarch and Initiative, right? And I don't know if those decks play it, but like there are so many commanders that have been around for so long that are just now getting attention because we're getting more and more people playing the format, and that's really exciting. So not only does every set bring like 5 to 10 new commanders that we can play, which is crazy, and they're like good. They're like, you know, TPI, for example, just got randomly printed, and it was like,
Surprise. I'm gonna be everywhere for a bit.
I remember one time during a league that I hosted here in Bellingham, somebody was like, "Dude, Ryan, what if they added red to Murmuring Mystic one day?" And I was like, "Dude, don't."
And
put,
then they made it generate artifact tokens too.
don't put dark thoughts in my head. Like, what are you doing? You know? And then it was like, oh, it's half the mana cost. Oh, it makes artifacts.
I was halfway there already with Maverick Thopterus. The two
yeah. I mean, that's a good one too.
Quite a bit because just generating a bunch of artifact creature tokens, so they both trigger, you know, all your symmetrical pingers.
Totally. So
it's just artifacts instead of spells.
Totally, yeah. So I think without further ado, let's roll into. Should we start with your RIW list that you won with? Would that be a good place?
Something I haven't really gone over as much is how I got to this list.
Yeah, so let's pull it up here. I don't know if people will be able to see you currently because I'm having to open something.
Yeah,
here.
Cover me up. Don't look at me.
He doesn't want to be seen. No. We go. All right. So let us move over into. And there we go. There he is. This is your build, Vizkopa Guildmage Burst Drain for RIW, PDH 1K for 2023. The 2023 is important, of course, because after this showing of 46 people or something, they're going to be doing this every year. So put this on the calendar, be there. I think next year, we got to get those numbers up. Rookie numbers. We got to get this to like, I think we could easily slap like 75 to 100 people into that space, fill the hall, push their capacity, make them hire more judges. Like, yeah. So, all right. So this deck here, you have a couple of things going on. And maybe we take a look at the commander first for folks that are maybe unfamiliar with it. Vizkopa Guildmage, 2 mana, 2/2, and Orzhov. It's a human wizard. You have the ability to give target creature, any creature, lifelink, which I don't know if you'd ever want to do that, but you could grant your own. You can grant somebody else. Maybe you need to team up against somebody and you give your opponent's Dargo lifelink or something.
Whenever it's just a way to survive just a little longer when someone's trying to kill you.
That's right.
You're saving your cards in hand.
Yep. Maybe you cast Vizkopa Guildmage, resources are low. You've done it with Opal Palace. Maybe it's a 5/5. Give it lifelink, swing in, double activate. 15. Big damage, right? So the second activated ability here is 1 white and a black to grant yourself an effect for the turn. Whenever you gain life this turn, each opponent loses that much life. Is that Sanguine Blonde or Exquisite Blood? One of the two.
Sanguine Bond.
Exquisite
Blood is the one where when someone else loses life, you
That's
gain.
Right. Now, what's key is you can do this multiple times. You can stack this. Which is exactly the point of the deck, right? Would you say the deck is more about the second activated ability than the first?
Absolutely, 100%.
Okay. Now, it's probably not always the case. We mentioned before this live stream that there might be a build out there that's a little more like mid-rangey, and you do like captivating, what was it called? Celestial Unicorn. Maybe you make big threats and...
So I know I heard Puzzle talking about another build that you've played around with that was more go wide aggro, and Vizkopa is just like a finisher. And that's actually even different than the creature build I was imagining. The creature build I was imagining was more devotion for Gary, more sacrifice for things like Vermin Gorger and Gutless I think it's Gutless Ghoul.
Yep.
Sacrifice a creature for 1 and gain 2 life. So you just like have 5 creatures on board, double activate Vizkopa, sack something to Astronaut's Altar, sacrifice 5 things to Gutless Ghoul, gain 10 life, drain people for 20. Like a go wide aristocrats style Vizkopa was what I was imagining.
Got it. Yeah, totally. And I think this is all to say that while we are presenting what Scarecrow won with, what he currently has, and what I currently have, that's not to say this is the end all be all. Like, I think that that a lot of commanders have a lot of flexibility, and there are different cards in this deck that can still bridge the gap between the two. Cards like Meditation Puzzle are a really good example of that, where it's like, this is really big life gain, and it's potentially free if you play enough creatures. And free gain 8, if you have 9 mana in play, is going to end the game. It is going to end the game. Gain 24, drain 24.
To add 3 to
or
it.
Yeah, gain 8,
Like
drain for 24. Mm-hmm. Yeah, pair that with a Radiant Fountain like you killed me with. I mean, yeah, we're on or you know, Kabira Crossroads.
Those are low key some of my absolute favorite cards in the deck.
Yeah. When
The
Kabira
lands that
Crossroads
gain
is
life.
like drain 6 to the table for free, it's like, wow, okay. That's heavy. It's heavy. Okay, so
Yep.
tell us a little bit about the deck and your thought going into the tournament with this list.
Well, quick background on where the deck came from. It started as a experiment comparing Vizkopa to Cliffhaven Vampire and trying to figure out, like, back in 2018, like, okay, I want a life drain deck. What's it going to look like? And I played a bunch with Cliffhaven because I wanted that grindy, slow drain, kind of what Brad's really into.
Like a slow dance.
Yeah, like extort, you know.
Yeah.
1 here, 1 there. You can't kill me because I'm gaining a bunch constantly. And sure, it was great, but politics just make that thing get eaten alive. You know, when you gain 30 life by turn 8, just everyone's going to kill you if they're still alive because they don't want you gaining any more life. And whenever I tried out Vizkopa and just like dropped Congregate and won on the spot, it was just like, oh, whoa, well, that's much more powerful. So all that to say that my journey with Vizkopa has come from a much more experimental and mid-power kind of play style, and as a result, it spent many years being much more tuned towards combat metas. So whenever like 2020, 2021, Crash is working on his tier list, and Vizkopa like briefly made it on, but they never even had a list that was good and representative, and eventually it fell off just because no one was playing it. I was still tuning mine to stop, you know, 8/8 beaters that were coming out.
For sure.
Like Sever Soul, 5-drop, black sorcery, destroy target creature, gain life equal to its toughness. I remember there was a game where I loaned out decks to people, and I was playing Gilderbaron and had like a 32/32 in play that was about to murder someone. And the person I had loaned out Vizkopa to, they Sever Souled my 32/32 and killed the table because they gave 32 life.
Yeah, that's
like,
heavy.
Like that, and the fogs you can still see in the deck, like Riot Control and Awestruck, something like that. Like the various damage prevention things are very much part of that legacy of the deck coming from a more mid-power meta, and honestly, that made this deck really well tuned for the meta we found.
And you know, the funny thing about it is that I talk a lot about how one of the really appealing parts of this format is that the delta between casual and competitive has just continued to constrict and constrict and constrict. And it's not hyperbolic to say that you can win a tournament with like kind of a mid-power deck.
Yeah,
and I mean, you're evidence of that, right? Like this list was designed for casual metas where people maybe play less removal, the threats get bigger, and you need to have answers to those things. Well, now the competitive meta is full of shit like that. I just won a game with Thrall Parasite where I just went Throne of the Dead 3 and I flipped a 10/10 Gloomfang Mauler into play, and I was like, here, let's go. You know, and opponents sitting there with Oubliette in hand. And they're like, sorcery speed, it's got hexproof. and
Yeah.
you know, just get them. And I think that is a really it's a really good thing, because I think that a lot of casual players come at the game from a casual standpoint. Not, and this is, I don't want to make a broad generalization or or to denigrate anybody. I think a lot of the casual that I've observed, where people say, no, I don't play competitive, and I ask them why, and they'll tell me, I'm not that good of a deck builder, I'm not that good of a Magic player, right? And
I mean, I
it's
think
not
for
because they're, which isn't really necessarily true. It's just like a self-confidence thing. The delta between cEDH and EDH is way, way bigger. So the jump from a more casual or mid power deck to a cPDH deck is not so big. It's going to just be more interaction. You might have tech pieces for certain things like Echoing Truth or Echoing Decay, or a Braid for that flexibility, things like that, or Righteous Aura to turn off combat, that kind of thing. It means that we can create a gateway for people to play more competitively, who might not otherwise be able to do it. I think that's
grab my
beautiful.
cat real quick.
Yeah, of course. So in this list here, what you're going to see is a lot of things that relatively inexpensively produce a lot of life gain. You've got cards like Meditation Puzzle, which can be anywhere from 2, I think probably averages like 2 mana. But you can see a world where with 24 creatures, this could totally be free. And one of the things that you had was a lot of creatures. This is like a big, big change, right, from a lot of the other lists. And I'm a big advocate of putting tons of creatures in cPDH decks. In general, you need attackers and blockers.
Well, in addition to that, part of it was very much started with lifelink creatures, because how can you get cheap life gain? Well, combat is certainly one way to do it. So you can see between things like the fogs, the lifelink creatures. If you look at instance, there's a few lifelink instance where it like buffs things, gives them +3 power, to where suddenly lifelink is more impactful, or a second creature has lifelink. There was a lot of stuff kind of aimed at being in a combat meta, like, okay, sure, something big is coming at me, and even if I don't have a fog, I can make combat, even when I'm on the defensive, so impactful that even with just showing half of what I have that impacts that, I can make people second guess attacking me. So there's a lot of pieces that aren't necessarily just I can use it at instant speed to kill the table when someone attacks me. It's also I can show just enough to make people second guess attacking me, and maybe they'll go somewhere else for one turn.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think that what we ended up landing on with our builds is at its core building around the same powerful stuff that we identified. So let's get into talking about really what you and I think is some of the most powerful stuff to do with Vizkopa. And we've talked about this extensively. It's these permanents, right?
Maybe just a little bit more background on, so the reason me and Ryan were so excited to discuss this is there's several other ideas or builds out there for Vizkopa. Like, I don't remember which tournament it was off the top of my head. I don't remember if it was Sanctuary or Rags to Riches, but there was someone else playing Vizkopa.
Yeah. They were playing, it wasn't, no, this person was playing the soul channeling combo.
You're right.
And we should
and
point
that's what
that
I was
out.
going to.
Yep.
And that's the same variant. The Puzzle Box was championing prior to RIW. He was saying, oh, this can be a meta buster. And what I was really amused, because I think you had a pre-RIW video that was also saying Vizkopa could be well positioned. And I didn't see either video until after the tournament.
Oh, yeah.
But anyway,
yeah.
The point was between like soul channeling, the aggro go wide version, the aristocrats go wide version, and this more ramp mid-range version, there's a lot of different variations out there. And me and Ryan, who have been championing the deck for years, I didn't even realize until we started talking like a week ago about our builds. I didn't realize how closely aligned we were with our ideas for the deck, because honestly, we developed our own ideas in parallel.
Yeah, independently. Parallel evolution.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think that the thing that, so first of all, to explain the soul channeling combo, you're basically doing rebel tutoring to find Children of Corliss, and then you're paying a ton of life with a card like soul channeling, or any ability that allows you to repeatedly pay life, and then you pay the life, you activate Vizkopa as many times as you need to. You sacrifice Children of Corliss, and you gain that life back. And once you gain it, you're going to trigger the Vizkopa as many times as you've already paid for it, and you're going to combo kill the table. And that's just one combo that you can do.
And the upside of that compact win con is they have a little more room in the deck for removal and toolboxiness.
Yep, and this is where kind of my initial builds, or Bobby and I's initial builds, not Bobby from Be Fine, but King Great, and I used to build the deck. Yeah, is that we played in a meta that was pretty hostile to combo players, which, given how much combo is winning right now, I think is entirely warranted. I think people just don't generally respect combo enough. So my builds originally were very much built around Extort, a couple of really heavy hitting, basically combo cards like War Report, Congregate, Riot Control. The other big ones are Sunspring Expedition. There's even like Font of Vitality or Font of Vigor. And basically building to have a couple of big hits, but then to extort people along the way with removal, sweepers, mana rocks, things like that. And so
down so the big hit kills.
Yeah, exactly. So not as much into the big hit. We're saying we're going to whittle people down. Everybody's going to be a lower life total in general by the time we want to combo. And then when we need to combo, we only need to deal 15, not like 30, right? And Nomad's commenting on, hasn't seen that and thinks it's pretty cool. The trouble with that combo is that it does bend the deck in some rather interesting ways. Vizkopa, as a commander, doesn't really care about protection that much. If you're noticing in this list here, there's nothing, right? Like Vizkopa is going to land, and it's either going to resolve or it's not. And when it resolves, we're going to activate it, and we're going to do our life gain thing, which means that kind of like Mayhem Devil, we're not going to play our commander until we're ready to do a thing. And this list is a little bit different, right? Because you've got a lot of creatures, you can hang it out there a little bit. But with the Soul Channeling combo, because it's so creature-based, you do actually have to play protection, but it's not really that good with your commander. So it's kind of there gets kind of pulled in some funky directions. That said,
you get extra deck slots, and then you have to eat half of them. You
have to eat half of them for other things that don't really work that great with your commander. So it's a thing you can do. It's something to watch if there's more effects that continue to bolster it. Obviously, the ability to tutor up your combo pieces with all these rebels is great. But we've chosen to take a different direction here, and I think we saw the results of it. This is a really excellent deck. Now,
real quick on the subject of protection. So like I said, I was excited to talk with Ryan about our builds, and one of the things that I found really exciting was, even as aligned as we are on the overall game plan and how Vizkopa works in our builds, there's still some really fundamental ideas of how we play the deck and how that takes our builds in different directions. And protection and when we play Vizkopa is a really big differentiator between the two of them, because I am a pretty big fan of playing Vizkopa out earlier, and there's this weird thing that happens where people can just get desensitized to them being on the table. And sure, it's at more risk for, a disabling aura to be dropped on it,
or a sweeper or an edict.
Right. So, okay, fine, it got killed. I'll replay it for 4. And it's just sitting out there. And look, there's another combo player. Pay attention to them. Whereas, so that makes me care a little bit more about protection than Ryan does. And it just makes our decks diverge just a little.
Yeah, and that's, and to be frank, if I had 3 more slots in the deck, or maybe 4, I would play Benevolent Blessing, Showmano's Blessing, Stave Off, and Ward of Lights. And the reason for that, the reason you should play these cards in your deck is that every single one of them targets a creature, not just your own. So when somebody goes to cast their Freed from the Real, their Ghostly Flicker, their combo card, Presence of Gond type combo, you just say no. And you're saying no forever if that thing resolves. Ward of Lights is the only exclusion because it sacrifices itself afterwards. And I think that, moving forward with Vizkopa, it's possible that I still want to find slots for that, because being able to hold Vizkopa out a turn with a Benevolent Blessing on it does mean that the following turn, we don't have to recast Vizkopa And
That's
that's
exactly what I was going to
massive
get to.
because,
Because so much of the time you're sitting there staring
yep,
and thinking, I don't have enough mana to play him and do the thing. I just need 2 more colored mana. So okay,
yes,
play him out this turn, and suddenly I'm to the point where I can kill the whole table
yep.
if Vizkopa
If
survives.
if it's around, yeah. And so I think having those ones because they're flexible is worth it. But it won't be the kind of thing where you've got like 10 counter spells and 5 protection spells
Yeah.
and this, that, and the other thing. These cards also hit our opponent's things. They're also interaction. So the fundamentals that I really want to illustrate of Vizkopa when you're doing what we're doing are on board, permanent based life gain effects. And this is something that King Great and I identified very early on was like people were just allowing Sunspring Expedition to resolve. And they'd be like
Yeah.
Vizkopa and somebody'd be like counter it and then they'd be like, okay, and then they'd like have some extort creatures. They'd like stay alive. They'd sweep the board. They'd kill some things, draw cards, draw cards, draw cards. They'd just be dirtling. And then there's Sunspring Expeditions up to 3 counters. And they'd be like, Font of Vigor. And so it'd be like, okay, well, I'm not dying this turn. And then they'd be like Vizkopa, and someone would counter it. And then they'd try one more time, Vizkopa, no counter spell. They go
Because
activate.
everyone's eating up their resources.
Right. They go activate. Somebody goes do, like kill the thing, like a murder or some effect. And they go activate again. Crack my 2 activated abilities. Drain the table. You're all dead. And it was just like, whoa,
Yeah.
where did that come from? And what it came from is these onboard sources of life gain that once they're down, and they can be deployed very early, turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, all the way throughout the game. That
And going
once we
back
have
to
these,
RIW,
yep, the moment
to
we resolve
RIW.
it, we just go off.
So whenever I had a game against you and Clay, that's exactly how the game ended. Was I had piled up a few things on
You had
board,
Augur
and-
Ilvek here.
Yep, for gaining 4 life on upkeep. That was the most time limited thing. So that was the thing I did first. So specifically what you were saying about like activate,
Yep.
and then crack your other things. So the timing is actually really important because if you activate Vizkopa first, someone can mess with your other things to try to make you crack them early, to where if they go on the stack on top of Vizkopa, you get the life gain, but you don't get the drain from it. So you really need to put your sacrifices and other instant speed stuff on the stack first, and then you put Vizkopa on top of that, holding priority throughout. So the first time your opponents have a chance to interact is everything's on the stack and it's in the order you want it to resolve it, with Vizkopa's ability first, and they can kill Vizkopa and it doesn't matter. The ability's on the stack.
This is why this commander is so exciting, because the one thing that it folds hard to is counter spells. Because if you lean too heavily on Congregate and War Report, those are still really good cards. They're really important because they are such a sledgehammer. They gain so much life. I mean, War Report, if you've got like 2 artifact rocks in play, say you've got 5 mana rocks, just for you, that's 7. Okay, like what about all the other people with their blood tokens, their treasure tokens, their artifact lands, their creatures, all this other shit, food tokens?
So
I mean,
I would compare
these things
them
slap.
to I would compare things like Meditation Puzzle, War Report, and Congregate to kind of like, it's not there in speed, but in terms of the mentality, I would compare it to Turbo Combo, where it's I'm going to go for it as fast as possible, and if they have the interaction, I fail this turn.
Yeah,
I'll try again later. But they'll just stop me. But I'm going to go for it because if they don't have it, I win.
Yeah,
and that's kind of where those large spells fall.
They're really, really good, and you know what they are? They're instant speed. So like the ability to do this stuff when everybody's tapped out is massive. And look, we also have to keep in mind that you don't need to do 30 damage these days. There's a lot of damage being slung around at the table, and Vizkopa Guildmage is a very high priority threat. I want to mention that, okay? Like I love this commander, and I don't want to do it dirty by telling people to attack it. But like this is a very, very good commander, a very scary commander. It's cheap. Its abilities all help you stay alive. Combo decks that can keep themselves alive are very scary. Abdel, great example, right? Even TPI, like Clay's building TPI around banishing that combo right now, and it's like, man, unless you've got flyers, what are you supposed to do about like the 10/1/1s that they have in play that they can just like happily throw under the bus? And so
Speaking of keeping itself alive, so I played a game on Islane's stream last night, and Bobby was going to town with Malcolm Breaches, and he had a bunch of symmetrical pingers out. And in retrospect, I think there's a new aspect of the deck that I haven't really gone deep into before. I haven't really thought about it, but the idea of giving opponents creatures lifelink, not just in combat, but when they have a symmetrical pinger on the board, suddenly, as like Blister's Bit Gremlin, pay 1, tap it, deal 1 damage to each opponent. Whenever that the owner casts instant sorcery, untap it. So Bobby was going to town with that thing last night, and if I had given it lifelink with Vizkopa's top ability, every time he did damage, I would have been gaining 3 for every 1 I.
So it is lifelink though. That means the controller gains the life.
Oh, that's right.
Unfortunately,
no, I just had that thought when you were talking about it earlier.
Yeah. Unfortunately, it's not like Vampiric Link or Spirit Link.
That's right, where I get it.
Yeah. If it were, we'd. Oh my God. I mean, that would be nuts. You would want to play protection because you would want to just say, "That's a nice Dargo. I'm gonna gain 7 and then drain the table. Everybody else's attackers become like your fodder." But regardless.
That shows how little I've even thought about that top ability, though.
I mean, yeah, no, it's all good. So we've got on one hand, we've got the big slappy War Report, Congregate, Riot Control, Meditation Puzzle type stuff, Sunspring Expedition. And then this is where the deck gets really interesting. There's a whole bunch of more stuff that's been printed. We have Golden Egg, we have Potion of Healing, we have the Orozca Relic, which is not as new, but still relatively so. We have even more with Lembas, and there's a few other ones too that allow us to very cheaply produce 3 life. And what you have to do with these life gain triggers is do the math on ratios, okay? Because if you can gain 3 life for 0 with like a Bottle Gnomes, that's or even 1 mana, right? That's like the ratio there is insane, right? 1 to 3.
I mean, as soon as you add double or triple Vizkopa activations, then it starts to make sense.
And in that case, what you're doing is you've got the moment you resolve Vizkopa, you crack that life gain effect, and then you activate it a bunch of times, and then you crack your life gain effect. And what you're going to get is you're going to get more activations of Vizkopa because you didn't have to pay 4 mana to gain the life. So you can either gain big life and pay once or twice, or you can gain smaller amounts and pay lots and lots of times to get the same effect. The difference being is that these are on board and nobody is ever going to counter a Potion of Healing. And I think that's really, really key, because countering Vizkopa when your deck has as many lands and as many rocks as this deck does feels really shitty. And I've done it a lot of times. I've looked at it and be like, that can't resolve this turn. Like, I'm dead.
In effect, your ramp turns into card advantage because it allows you to eat your opponent's removal over the course of a few turns.
Yeah. So we've got the list here. What about this list have you changed? Did you sent me a link? Was it the current? Let's see.
Yeah, the version I played on Islane's stream last night. Just this week, I swapped out 19 cards.
My God.
Which 3 of those are lands, but still, it's a large chunk of the deck.
Okay, so let's pull that up here really quick so that folks can see. We'll pull up your current list.
And part of this is definitely because the version I took to RIW still had some aspects that were very casual oriented, and just playing in the faster paced environment that was a competitive tournament just added some extra emphasis to the things that were too slow. Like, I knew there were things in the deck too slow, but I hadn't worried about it as much because it's still been doing pretty well before. It's still pretty consistently been one of the scariest things at the table playing in mid power, very consistently. So there was never as much emphasis on, I didn't feel where the fat was that needed to be cut out of the deck as much until I was at RIW.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of there's things like Pious Warrior, which I mentioned on Common Theory with Dallas and with Puzzle and Gator, and like it's a 4 mana creature that I drew it a lot during the tournament, and it does nothing for me. So
Yeah.
there were a few things like that that got cut out, and there was adding like then there were the aspects that me and you were discussing super heavily last week, like making room for a little more ramp, a little bit of protection, a little more removal, just like all the fundamentals of the deck. Where can I just slip in a little bit more?
Look at that, 20 differences between the deck.
Yeah,
So,
and a big chunk of that is my creatures, because you're super heavy on ramp,
yeah.
and I have like 2/3 as much ramp as you, and the difference, a lot of that goes into my creature suite.
Yeah, it does. It does. So this is actually a sneak peek into it here. Um, so the big ones here is that you were cutting some lifelink. You cut your life staff. You cut the angel synergy with
So
the Seraph Sanctuary and the Seraph of Dawn.
another idea with the creature suite is, because I have a lot of initiative and monarch in my local meta. Um, one of the players, well, two of them love wheeling it out at every opportunity. So I've been left out one or two games of the initiative game, and it feels bad seeing other people accrue that much value so quickly while you're just sitting there not being able to break through. So I've got life linkers that can give me free life gain and help the Vizkopa win plan, but they're also usually evasive to where I can steal monarch or initiative. And
Yeah,
then,
Ginger Brute's a
politic to
really
get
good
away.
example of that. I
Yeah.
really like. This is a card
Yeah,
that's not in my list, but it probably should be.
and Gingerbrute was specifically put in to replace Seraph of the Dawn. I think it is
Yeah,
the 4-drop. Yeah,
which is a really important thing to remember, chat, is that when you're bringing cards in and taking them out, you're not just taking 20 cards out and putting 20 cards in. There are cards coming in for specific slots,
yeah.
right?
So like Gingerbrute still fills the
Life gain.
lifelink, the life gain option, but it also still fills the evasive steelback initiative.
And it's a quarter of the cost.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think
It's just not quite as good at being free life gain.
Totally. You've also got Rest for the Weary. You've got the Sunbeam Spellbomb. So you actually went up on Lembas as well. You went up on a couple of cards that are additional onboard sources of life gain. They're activatable. And what you took out were cards like Wall of Hope. You took out the Pious Warrior, which basically you don't have control over them.
Yeah, they're more situational. There we go. They require my opponents to do certain things in order for me to make use of them.
Right, that makes sense. You also took out this protection spell here and this protection spell.
Yeah,
and you brought in Stave Off.
Expensive. They were a little too expensive to make use of regularly. And Rise Again, or Return to Action,
Yep.
I can't remember what that one was. Yeah, the Grave Flicker effect. So that one was both of those are trying to fill double duty between giving lifelink as a combat trick to get surprise life gain and being a protection spell. And the surprise combat aspect of it is one of those things that I've kind of held a torch for, trying to make it work in the deck, because I love combat tricks.
Right.
Going back to my days as a middle schooler, Timmy, playing big green stompy things with my friends. And it's just an element of the deck that has never panned out well, and this is the final vestiges of it getting cut.
Yeah. And I see you've also added like Snuff Out, Go for the Throat, just some good removal. You also cut Gary, and we talked about this quite a bit. This is a very interesting choice.
Gary was the last cut I made when you were talking about it. So the things that work for Gary is he works with my creature suite. Like even just Vizkopa and Gary on the field, you're still activate Vizkopa once with Gary, and you have 3 devotion, so that's 3 drain from each person. You gain 9, which drains them for another 9. So activating Vizkopa once with minimal devotion, you end up draining a total of 12. So decent return, but what really tipped me over the edge was, okay, someone just kills Gary in response, or even just bounces him to hand with an Ether Spellbomb, and suddenly the return on the big mana you just put into it,
it's not good.
Almost nothing.
Yeah, it's not good, and really, there's not a lot of devotion in the deck in general.
And I cut a little bit more whenever I did this rev, just a little bit.
Yeah, because what you can see here is the cards that we have that generate devotion are Oubliette, Pestilence, and these creatures, and that's it. And so, like, I think in a lot of cases, it's going to be like just Vizkopa and Gary, in which case bouncing it, killing it, right, in a deck where we can't protect it is going to be probably a common play pattern. Um, on top of that, so between 3 and 5 devotion, with the possibility that our opponents just go kill Gary on the stack, activate, 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 kill it on the stack. That feels really bad. One of the worst things that can happen in a Vizkopa game is that you like activate, 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 cast War Report, and somebody counters it, and you've basically blown your entire turn. Time walk, complete time walk, and it only took like a 2 mana counter spell, and
That was
so
something I had fun with in the tournament, was when I did have a larger amount of drain available, was playing games with how it was sequenced and how people perceived it.
yeah,
So my game with you, I held up the land in hand, uh, that the
the Radiant
ETB,
Fountain.
right, ETB gained 2 life, and I triple activated Vizcopa, so that was going to be another 6 life drained. So I was holding that in hand, and the rest of the stack was resolving. Bobby tries to combo on top of that, and you're trying to figure out if you can stop me or if you stop Bobby or what. And from what you can see, it looks like you survived me comboing, and I'm just killing Clay and
Yep,
Bobby.
and we
And
should clarify. Clay was at 18, Bobby was at 9, and I was at 24. I did
and
the
I was
math
draining
on it,
20.
and I was like, I'm alive. However, I also, it was a long weekend for me. And both Clay and I had removal for things. I think for Clay, he wasn't exactly sure like if he needed to do anything. I was set on killing something on end step because of the Augural Vec, but I think it was like we just
We
went
all
through it.
expected Bobby to wipe on his turn, and he didn't.
Yeah, there was
And
that,
I think
and
none of us really finished processing that
yeah,
by the
yeah.
time it
And then we
already
just
became
passed the
my
turn, right?
activation.
And it was to my demise because I went to 20 and then you drained me for another 6 with the Radiant Fountain and the 3
Yeah.
activations. So it
But
was,
specifically, holding that Radiant Fountain back changed how you perceived what was going on and
yep,
changed your priorities in what you were trying to interact with
yeah,
during that stack resolution. And the same thing happened in game 2, where I couldn't quite get there, with draining the whole table, and I knew the Spike Dragon player was holding a counterspell for my meditation puzzle. So instead of like continuing to try to bank mana and waiting longer and double activating Vizcopa when I can play meditation puzzle and then it just getting countered, instead I played it a little earlier with only one Vizcopa activation, where it didn't kill anyone, but it got everyone to low life totals.
yep, yep,
And that made the Sprite Dragon player think, maybe I can use this to my advantage. And he let it resolve. And then they fought amongst themselves, and I was able to kind of politic with them and point
yeah,
out how much of a threat the Arenas player was. And I managed to pull a win out of it because instead of using the deck's normal MO if I need to kill everyone at once, I saw that that wasn't going
yep,
to happen. I was
yep.
able to do things early in
You're
order
kind
to
of able
avoid the
to
counterspell. Yeah.
essentially like manage your own, you're essentially slow rolling, right? Like, and
Yeah.
that's a really powerful thing to do. And it's something this deck can do that other combo decks can't,
Yeah.
which is that
Because
combo
even when
decks
you're
generally have
comboing,
to
you're strengthening yourself.
yeah, and a combo deck has to do it all at once. Their stuff all has to happen right then and there to win. And this is a burn deck. So like if we activate, if we like crack a potion of healing and we activate twice, well, not only are we gaining 3 life, but that's 6 damage. And we're going to be able to capitalize that later by having to resolve less spells, less activations to do this. And really there's only one answer to these activations, and that is Mirror Shell Crab, which nobody is currently playing.
There was one. I heard it got discarded to counter something once during
Wow.
RIW.
Yeah, I mean it's not a great counter spell, and I don't think I'll be playing it just because Vizkopa is around. Because I think the answers to Vizkopa are
I
they're commander damage,
I
right? Commander damage
I
and
don't
counter spells.
I don't think you're giving it enough credit, because it can hit things like um, Abdel Adrian. It can hit that ETB trigger.
The
And
thing the thing about that's funny is that while it can hit the trigger, why not just counter the spell? right? And the other thing with Abdel is like you can always kill Abdel on the stack to stop the flicker. So the weird
Yeah.
thing about Crab is that because it's 3 mana for tax of 3, there's
Hmm.
always this thing where it's like, why am I not just countering the spell with something that costs 2 mana? Because it would be the same thing. There's very few, like, there aren't as many cast triggers out there. There are certain triggers that are important to counter. And I actually think that the best home for Crab is in decks that care about their graveyard. Because being able to say they have a relic and they crack it and you say no to the activation, that is very high value. And I think that, or a Tormod's Crypt or a Nihil Spellbomb, anything like that,
Or
being able to say no to something that's
even
already in play.
something like even something like an Ether Spellbomb.
Yeah, or an Ether Spellbomb. Yeah. I mean, it's not that there isn't a home for it. And I should be clear too. I played Mirror Shell Crab in almost all my blue decks for a long time until it stopped feeling good. And
That's
this
fair.
is definitely a deck where, like, if you're worried about dying to Vizkopa, you should probably play it because it will hurt the Vizkopa player.
Yeah.
You know,
To me, the issue of it costing 3 really like says something about the tempo that we're playing at, and
it
it's something
does.
I've been thinking a lot about, just because of the mid-power decks I've been playing. The games in my local meta, or even like games where I test my decks against themselves, a lot of them aren't necessarily this turn 7 to 9 meta that we saw at RIW, or
Yeah,
even in like the away from the tournament games we had at the house. Those were still ending like
still
turn 8,
fast.
9. Yeah.
Yeah.
So to me, it's been like this kind of like real self evaluation of, am I still really building up to mid power, or were we just seeing like everyone there was such experienced deck builders that that was actually like
Yeah.
more living in the space between? And
Our
I
data
think,
suggests that 9 turn average is kind of where we've. It seems like that's where it's
well,
it's 10.
but
It's
your
like
all's
9
data
10. Yeah.
so your all's data is purely competitive, and my train of thought has been,
Oh, for the blending of the two, which we saw at the tournament.
yeah, or even just pure mid power. And the more I've been thinking about it, something kind of clicked for me today, realizing that I think specifically the blending speeds up the clock a great bit, because when you have pure mid power, you have so much more combat threats. Where does your removal go? It goes to combat threats. But when you have this mixing of combo and of competitive combo and combat decks, the combat
It
threats
matters.
hardly ever eat removal.
They no,
Like they
exactly.
just go
Like
unchecked.
yeah, and this is something that I think that you can mark my words on this as more and more decks get better and better and better at clapping cheeks in combat and making your life total matter. And as the aggro decks begin to understand better, and the aggro players begin to understand better what their role at the table is, because everybody has a job to play, those combo decks are going to start to have to counter stuff like gut. They're going to have to spend a counter spell on it, because you think about it, like
So
you have 30
there's
life points. A gut player who resolves a gut on turn 3 and is able to produce a token right off the bat and is able to continually feed it till turn 5 can deal 30 damage on turn 5. And if you counter or kill that gut, bounce it, whatever it might be, killing it really or countering it being the better ones, that is a difference between 30 damage on turn 5 and 6 damage on turn 5. And that is a lot of turns if you're a Gretchen player or you're an Abdel player, to draw cards, to deploy your pieces, and to buy yourself time. And so, and it's not just gut, right? There's other aggressive decks out there that you might need to do this to, like maybe a Mr. Orfeo, or really anything that can present a lot of damage. And I think we're going to see that evolution in things, and even more so, we're going to continue to see more and more decks leveraging the combat step. Currently, it feels like there's like aggro players who are doing combat stuff. There's some, like a couple of Voltron decks. There's a really, really big gap to fill as more and more experienced players enter the format and start playing mid-range, because in mid-range, combat damage is all we do. It is the win
on
condition still, right? Or
on the
pinging.
combat versus combat side, on the mid power side, like that was kind of my realization today, was it's not that mid-power's power has crept up to the point that we can kill each other super quick.
Yeah.
It's that realization of it's because so much removal is being held up for combo and it lets the combat threats go unchecked.
And exactly.
If you move back towards a mid-range non-combo meta,
Yep.
I think that clock slows down a lot.
It does.
That's not necessarily just talking about competitive. I think that's true for mid-power as well.
It is.
So
I mean, I can tell you as an avid mid-range and control player, I almost never kill a gut. And in fact, I've even countered kill and counter spells going towards a gut because I know what their job is. I want them around. They're an important piece of the puzzle, and they're on my team, right?
Like, then what happens when there's no combo player at the table?
That's a different dynamic. I won't do it then.
Yeah.
then
that's
I'm probably
that's what I'm saying.
Yeah. Then I'm like pressing my foot onto their neck. Yeah,
and
for sure.
Maybe the second time you let gut come out because someone else has developed a board state, you want gut to pressure them too. And now you get into the table politics more, but
for sure.
Just the point of what I'm getting at is, yes, we're seeing the clock speed up, but I think RIW and the way we were mixing metas was also taking that same effect and turning it up to 11.
Oh, it was. Yeah. And we're seeing like the evolution of the format in a really big way. One thing I want you to do real quick, can you increase your output by like 20% on Discord? I just want to
just on my mic. How's that?
There we go. Yeah. Keep going up.
How about now?
More?
Might be max. Just a second. Go into Discord.
Yeah, go into Discord and just add like 20% to it. I want to get you a little more into the yellow here. I was realizing your output's a little bit low. So I want to make sure the folks can hear this this hot fire you're spewing right now. And while you do that, let's transition into the comparison between our decks.
I'll just scoot the mic closer to me. Any better?
Go again?
Any better?
Yep, that's better. That's better.
Okay, cool.
There we go.
I'll also just talk louder.
That's great. Flyjum commented, sorry Fly, I didn't get back to you on that one. It says, surprise, no Orcish Medicine. Orcish Medicine is 1 and a black, instant speed. Target creature gains indestructible or lifelink. Make a 1/1. The reality is that it's not the same flexibility as something like Stave Off, Benevolent Blessing, Chomano's Blessing. The token really doesn't matter that much, and the lifelink isn't actually a very premium effect. And if you look back at the last comparison we did, you know, some of the cards that came out were cards that gave lifelink and regenerate, right? And the lifelink just isn't that important in this build. If you're doing something where you're making bigger threats, maybe you have Celestial Unicorn, and then the ability to give it lifelink is more powerful. But again, the commander
when
can
your
do that too.
When your lifelink is going on a 2/2 or a 3/2, it's not
that big. Yeah.
Even if it comes with a buff, like on some of the things I took out.
Now, Orcish Medicine is a good card in other decks. I just don't think it's the right call for this one.
And I definitely considered it. Like, it was on my considering list for this rev, but the fact that the protection is only indestructible, I'm not huge on Black's indestructible and regenerate stuff most of the time, just because it's a fairly narrow band of the removal that's out there. Like, honestly, the removal I'm scared of is the auras.
Yep. You don't want to get your commander locked down.
Yeah. And I mean, the first game I played with Rufkin, and I think Dallas was the name of the younger gentleman playing Sprite Dragon. Like, both of them were playing
Jackson.
Lockdown Aura.
That was Thank you. Jackson.
I knew it was a city.
Yeah.
I knew it was a city.
By the way, Jackson, if you're out there, you're a hero. Jackson came up to me at the beginning of the tournament and very, very sheepishly asked me, "Would you sign my Magic card?" And it about broke my heart. I was like, I never had anybody ask for that, so it was really, really cool. So thank you, Jackson. And I hope you're in the Discord server too. So if anybody knows little Jackson, you let him know he's got a home at the Common Connoisseurs. So you're playing him.
Yeah, after he murdered Gator, there were still lockdown auras. Well, no, I think we had just gotten rid of some. But the point is, both him and Rufkin played lockdown auras on Vizkopa, and that really is the worst case scenario.
It is.
Destroy Vizkopa, we play him again.
Stasis field, the deep freeze. reprobation, anything like that.
Yep.
It hurts for sure.
And that's why we're not as worried about the indestructible.
Yep. And we're not so worried about those effects either, because when we cast Vizkopa, it's either countered or we're winning the game, or we're doing so much damage that our extort is going to get us the rest of the way.
Yeah.
Right. So it's kind of like Zada, in the sense that, like, Zada, as much as people talk about Zada getting dumpstered by Oubliette, if your Zada gets Oublietted, I'm sorry to say that you either just got really, really unlucky, or you played the deck wrong, because you shouldn't be hanging your Zada out there. Use Zada, make a ton of mana, draw your deck, and then in the interim, people are killing it, but it doesn't matter because it's on the stack, and you just go Expedite, and you draw all of your cards in response, and you make all these tokens and all this mana, and then it dies, and with all that mana, you cast it again, and you do your thing again. So the auras aren't a huge concern for this deck so much, in my opinion, just because I'm not hanging the Vizkopa out there.
As I am, and that's why I've got what is it? Light of Hope was
destroy target.
That's one of my favorite new things I've added because of the modality.
And I've got Light of Hope too.
Yeah,
I added that one over Chaplain's Blessing because it's instant speed. So,
and because there's so many enchantment combo threats out there right now.
Freed from the Real,
the Ophidian Eye on something like one
Kedis,
of the pingers,
or Malcolm.
Yeah. Well, no, or like Reckless Fireweaver.
Yeah, the funny thing about that is that a lot of times those combos aren't deterministic. They can
be,
but
they can still absolutely
draw like 15 cards.
But when they're doing it, there's oftentimes this like pause where people are like hesitant to destroy the creature or the enchantment because it doesn't look game winning in that moment. But if you let them draw 6 or 9 cards, my God, their chances of winning just skyrocketed.
Yeah, I'm just gonna tell you folks, if you don't think that's a problem, reassess, because curiosity effects are only played in decks where they can draw 3 cards for everything that they do. So if you're comfortable with a player drawing like 9 cards, 15 cards, okay, go right ahead. But it's definitely like, it's not deterministic, like a lot of times, like in TPI, my combo is soft, right? It's there to do a bunch of damage. The pingers are already like the way that I'm doing damage outside of combat, but they're also part of that soft combo to just draw so many cards. It's basically like another copy of Keep Watch or Distant Melody, right? But it's attached to a creature. So we're going to just draw a crazy number of cards, and that's going to predispose me to being in a good position.
Yeah. So Light of Hope is the primary use is enchantment removal. There's combo threats. There's the auras that can lock down Vizkopa, or even there's a few different things. You could also use it for politics. One of my favorite things that I don't think you do as much. Oh, my video just went out.
Yep, you're fine. I got you.
Okay, cool.
There you go.
So I really like using my removal a little earlier in the game to kind of enforce this narrative of I'm here to help the table, and look, someone else is the threat, and I'm going to help you all deal with the person that's threatening all of us.
Yeah.
And sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, but it's just the narrative I like to use.
Well, and the removal is still important, because the other way that we lose is commander damage. We're probably not going to die to like a gut. We're probably more likely to die to a Dargo or to like a Nightscape, Night Veil Predator, or a Crackling Drake, or a Rilsa, or something that's going to do commander damage.
So I don't hesitate to use removal a little earlier, and if it helps me politically, all the better. Because real primary purpose, buying time for me to gain more mana, draw more cards, get to the point of comboing, but politics help to go attack the person with the highest life total so I can kill you all easier.
Yeah.
But if the situation doesn't arise where you need the enchantment removal, 1 mana for 4 life at instant speed on Light of Hope is pretty good too.
Yeah, I mean, again, like that's one. We have to do the math here. One of the most efficient life gain spells in the whole deck, and it's unmatched other than Bottle Gnomes, because Bottle Gnomes is 0 for 3. Like that ratio is infinite, right? 0 for 3. You break your calculator with that one. But it's Rest for the Weary, which is the 1 mana. You have to play lands to add charge count. Or wait.
Rest for the Weary.
Sunspring Expedition. Sorry. Yeah. Sunspring Expedition, which is 1 mana gain 8. That's the best ratio you can possibly get in the deck. and
But
everything
it's
else is
free the
like
turn you do it,
it's free
which
the
is
turn
weird.
you do it, which is even more fucked up. So it's really like 0 for 8. But like ultimately, we have to think about those ratios, right? And 1 for 4 is really close to kind of like 1 for 5 is superb. 1
Yeah.
for 4 is
So
great, but you're getting flexibility to protect things with a counter or to destroy an enchantment at instant speed.
eh, instead of talking about the high end, me and Ryan had a lot of
Yes,
discussion
low
last
end.
week about, yeah, what is the bare minimum you'll accept? And for me, that rule of thumb for a long time has been 2 to 1. For every mana I'm spending on this effect, the turn I'm going off, I need to be getting at least 2 life out of it,
So like a
bare
ginger brute.
minimum. Well, so food's an exception. Food is usually the back. It's plan C
Yeah,
for Vizkopa.
it's this other thing that you can do
Yeah.
where you can be sitting there with like 2 food and play in a ginger brute, play your Vizcopa, activate it, and like crack all your things.
Yep.
And
So food is the only. Yeah, I think the only thing I have that's below that ratio on the turn I try to
yeah,
go
it's
off because
1.5.
I see it as such incidental. But even like a lot of the stuff that is trying to think of some of the examples. There's a lot of 2 to 1 examples where you end up paying like 3 mana to gain 6 life.
Yep.
I think it's like
Font
a
of
siphon.
Vigor is 7.
Well, there's a 3 drop black sorcery that's like siphon.
Oh, Siphon
It's
Soul and Blood Tithe.
yeah, not blood tithe, but siphon soul is specifically you end up
3 for
draining.
6, so it's 2
Yeah,
for 1. Yeah,
yeah,
but it's actually a little bit more than that because you also drain 2, so
yeah. So
it's a little
like
bit better than that.
so those that get just beyond that, that tends to be the lower end of what I'm playing. And if something makes it at 2 to 1 or lower, it's because of modality or other incidental
Yep,
value
yep.
where the life gain is back up.
Yeah. So talking about the differences a little bit between our decks, the fundamental difference, and we alluded to this earlier, is actually not in the core game plan because the core game plan is about permanence in play that you can activate to gain life.
And ramp.
And it's but the thing that's different is and ramp actually. Ramp is you're still ramping quite a bit. I am ramping exceptionally hard.
Yeah, I've got like 12, 13 rocks. You've
Yep.
got like what, 20?
17. I
Okay.
think 17 or 18, one of the two.
You
And
cut it down just a hair.
a little bit. Yeah, I had 20, but I had to make room for other stuff. And
Yep.
the I think what we've come to the conclusion of is that Vizkopa is a mana hungry deck. You're playing a couple more lands. I think you're playing 1 or 2 more lands than I am. So
Yeah, I'm
we're
still at
so
36, I think.
yeah, 36. I think I'm at 34 or 35. Let me just back up here and we can take a look. Let's
Which
see.
honestly, land mid to late game land drops with Vizkopa are so huge.
They're so huge.
The game I narrowly lost
35,
last night.
35 and
Like,
17. So we're only
yeah,
17 is 4 less than your 13, maybe 5 less if it's 12, and then I'm down 1 rock. So
but my game last night, if I had hit the turn 6 land drop, I would have won. But I didn't and drew. What did I draw? I think I drew Siphon Mind instead.
yeah, which I
And
guess that is a land, but it wasn't in time for what you
right,
needed to do. It sounds like that was a pretty fast game, though.
yeah,
So
it ended on. I got my turn 7. Bobby took his turn 8.
yeah. So here's so what we can see is the big difference is that is the rocks really. I have a little bit more removal than you do. I
Yep.
have Befoul because we're both on Dimir Houseguard. And Dimir
Yeah.
Houseguard, by the way, if you're in black, I'm just sorry to say, but it's staple. Like there's
Yeah.
very few cards, very few commanders that don't want to have Dimir Houseguard, and it's because you can hit Pestilence, Arms of Adar, and Eye Blight Massacre, Evankar's Justice just for sweepers. You can hit Slum
can
Reaper and Chain Devil for edicts. You can hit Vicious Battle Rager for initiative, Trailblazer's Torch for initiative, Thorn of the Black Rose for Monarch, Snuff Out in a pinch, which sounds dumb, but I've done it. If you've got nothing else, you can do it.
You can even get Siphon Mind if you're just.
You can
at
get
0
Siphon
gas
Mind for
mana.
cards. You can get Sisei's Ring for ramp. You can get so many good cards, and it's just a 4 mana 2/3 unblockable that doesn't die. So there's a lot to like about Vizkopa Guildmage, or sorry, about Dimir Houseguard. The other thing too is it's a creature, which means if you're doing the stuff that I've been recommending lately, which is Reaping the Graves, Wander in Death, Blood Fountain, Mortuary Mire, Haunted
Get
Fengraf,
back,
Witch's
yeah.
Cottage, you can get that shit back and you can use it again, which is so strong. It's so
Yep.
strong.
Or going
Crazy.
to the combat side of things, if you have to have it in play, it's got two other things that are useful. The
Yeah, yeah.
evasion means you can play the Monarch Initiative
Yep.
game,
Yep.
and this instant speed sacrifice
Oh yeah.
means that you can
No
keep your
oubliette,
commander out
no
from under those
stasis.
pesky or the
Yep.
auras. Yep.
The value ordering on that card is insane. So buy it in foil before it gets too pricey because I'm going to buy them up. It's one of those
Honestly,
expensive ones with the the gate
yeah.
crash logo on it.
On Twitter, I see Brad talking about reprints all the time, and to me, it's just a matter of time.
Oh yeah,
The transmute cards are
yeah.
constantly creeping up, and I think those are one of the highest on my list of reprints I wish we had.
They're huge, and
Yeah.
they they're super strong. And even like the other ones, like Shred Memory is
Yep.
2. You can search for the Deadly Dispute. You can get
Even
Miracle's
Brain
Edict.
Spoil.
You can
I think
get
Brain
Brain
Spoil is
Spoil
like,
for Peregrine Drake. Like holy shit! Like
well, also Gary.
and Gary. But there's a lot more than that. 5 mana is also Underdark Explorer. It's Rot Tide
Yep.
Garganta. 5 mana you could also be tutoring for. Oh, what else?
In mid power, I've got a Shesra deck, so it's Golgari, just mid range ramp stomp.
Oh yeah.
A little bit of Aristocratic draw, but it plays all the like 5-6 mana creatures that
Sick.
have removal stapled to
Yeah,
an
yeah.
ETB, and Brain Spoil can either just be removal if I need it right now, or it can grab me one of those
Yeah,
removal creatures.
for sure. So a couple of things about your deck that I'm still looking
yeah.
for room in mine. But let's go over what I've got here. So I've got Sign in Blood. I've got the more rocks. I've got a little bit more removal. I have Befoul. Befoul is a very important card because Dimir Houseguard tutors for land destruction. And it kills creatures, and it does prevent regeneration. It's a very important thing to have access to.
When you think you're going for land destruction, that's honestly not an axis I have thought on much in Vizkopa.
Yeah, it's mainly because it kills creatures. That's the thing. But it's
right.
like it also has this sort of like end the game for somebody who cares about their land aura. You know, like
okay, so you're thinking of it against Gretchen versus against Flicker combos.
Yep. Or you could use it to destroy Mystic Sanctuary too. You know, and that's fine as well. But again, like Befoul usually is kind of like Monvuli Acid Moss, where the reason you run it is because it's a ramp spell that has modality and tutor ability to also, you know, ruin somebody's day that way. So you swap a removal spell out for Befoul, and then that comes in. I have Unmake.
Okay, but it's a sorcery. That's why
it's a sorcery, which is
That's why I was thinking it wouldn't be as impactful against Mystic Sanctuary, because a lot of times
they have the
played like the turn of,
or they can protect their Mystic Sanctuary with cards like with Tidal Bore. So they do their combo thing early. They return it because it's important to their combo. So they can protect it, but if they're getting rid of their Tidal Bore into their graveyard, that's an opportunity for somebody to get rid of, and they have to have it. If they don't, their only other thing to get that card back is Reclaim. There's other cards that allow them to get it back, but not very many. They might have Tamiyo's Safekeeping to protect their land, but it's not a ton. So basically, removal is the big one, and that's really it. The other thing too, and I would encourage you to look at this for your deck, is something I'm doing lately is I'm cutting one land, one basic, for each 1 mana cycler that I play in my deck.
So if you haven't listened to it already, go listen to the PDH pod episode for today. They go over this exact thing.
Yep.
And honestly, I'm kind of halfway in between.
They're Ash Barons that search for duels, and then later on you just like cast your troll and give it lifelink, right?
Here's the thing. What they discuss is the idea that as soon as you replace a land 1-1 with these guys, you're effectively saying that 80-90% of the time I'm going to use it for its cycling.
Yeah. Well,
instead of if you replace at a 2 or 3-to-1 ratio, then you're saying that half the time I'm going to use it as a creature.
We have to keep in mind that most cards aren't in our opening hand, so I would disagree with that assessment. Most
Well,
cards
but
aren't in our.
remember, Vizkopa care. That's what I was saying earlier about land drops. Vizkopa really cares about land drops, and a turn 6/7 land drop can make or break a game for you.
Totally.
So
So it's
it doesn't
mostly
matter if it's
a
late game.
it's mostly an Ash Barrens that's going to find a dual land in this deck, or just a basic
Yeah,
in
and you
this
care
deck.
about the duel more than I do because of your
Yeah,
snow
just well
propensity.
as snuff out. I mean, that's the main one. But again, we're gonna hit our land drops. We're gonna have swamps in play. That's not the big thing.
Yeah,
It's just that it's action that when we top deck it later on and we don't have anything else going, these cards are really really good. Like Eagles of the North. In this deck, Eagles of the North not incredible.
yeah.
However, if we have extorters in play, it's gonna give them an additional power. We'll be able to fly in. It itself is a 3/3 flyer. And but the Troll of Khazad-dûm is really what fucks. A 6/5 unblockable, basically.
Yeah. I
Triple
mean,
menace,
so
right?
here's the thing about the unblockable. What I have seen time and time again, both in the game last night against Bobby and in some mid-power games, is that there's a lot of time the person with the highest life total is that way because they have sufficient blockers that they don't take chip
Yes,
damage.
yes.
And a lot of times that means they still have 3 creatures out. So sure, the troll can trade well, but it doesn't necessarily mean you're getting the damage that you actually want.
Or even better, just as you said, it's a blocker. And I think that that's like you've got a lot of functionality there. I wouldn't encourage people to play
Honestly,
any of the
like
cyclers that are more than one in place of a land. That's what's key. You only
paying
play
6 for a blocker is not where I want to be with Vizkopa though,
it's
because
it's not.
at that
Yep.
point I would rather, yeah, there's so many other things I would rather be
Right.
doing with 6
But
mana.
it's free. And that's the thing. These cards are, if you're playing Ash Barrens in your deck, these cards are free. And
Well,
look
so
at what
that's
this
what I was
also
saying.
does is it gets the Witch's Cottage, right? So we can get a creature like an Extorter back. We can get like a Bottle Gnomes maybe. There's a lot of other use cases for these that are really impressive.
Actually, that brings up a really good point, the idea of getting bottle limbs back.
Oh yeah,
So
exactly.
going back to, even though me and Ryan have this pretty closely aligned idea of how the deck functions, there's two or three ideas on which we fundamentally disagree that makes them play and build very differently.
Yep.
So we already covered one of those with the what did we even talk about before? The creature combat focus?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So that was one aspect. Another aspect that we've touched on some is playing out Vizkopa. I played out early, and that kind of harps upon I play a lot more political mind games with mine. And then the last one is, what was the card that spawned this? Was my train of thought finding the other two.
Had a brain fart.
Yeah. What was the card we were talking about just then?
Just now it's Troll. Or was it
You're
on Eagle? Or was it Bottle Gnomes?
Bottle Gnomes. Okay.
Yeah, Bottle Gnomes.
So the idea of recursion. I play a lot more politics, and specifically that ties into this larger idea of Ryan is building with inevitability, and a lot of times he is going to take big chunks out of the opponents and then reset and do it again.
Yep.
Whereas I don't want to take, like 99% of the time, I do not want to be taking chunks out of people because it's going to make them double down on thinking I am the big threat and they will try to kill me harder. So I really don't do that big first activation and reset. I wait longer and really try to kill the whole table at once, a lot more than Ryan does.
Yeah, and what you've got is like you can see the evidence of that because I have a little bit more removal. I also have safe passage. I have a little bit more like big life gain. I also have like the Scholar of Atheros, which is basically extort that you just pay for without a spell.
And it's also why I don't have like Reckoner's Bargain and Deadly Dispute.
Yeah, well, the Reckoner's Bargain and the Deadly Dispute are cards that that work in this deck better than yours because I have artifacts in my mana base. I have artifacts. Which I think for your War Report they're probably supposed to be there too. But it's like the but I can sack rocks. I can sack all sorts of stuff. I can also sack creatures in response, and they felt pretty good. The Reckoner's Bargain also has felt great as just again, this is a 2-mana gain 3, gain 4. You can like tap 2, float it, sacrifice a Sisay's Ring, to gain 4, and that's a 2-for-1 on the ratio, which is good as well. The Deadly Dispute also giving us that artifact back for War Report is there. But I think the point remains that yours is looking for more of that OTK, and mine still has the OTK. And again, this is like a 5% difference kind of a thing. They're really, really similar because we both still have War Report, Sunspring Expedition. I don't have Congregate, but instead I have Font of Vigor, right? Basically the same concept. It's just all different mixes of the same permanent that gains a ton of life. But one of the things I wanted to do while we were here is I wanted to look at some of the things that I am looking at including in my deck that are in yours or not in yours. And so there's a couple of them here that I want. I've come around on Bottle Gnomes. So we're going to add this to the sideboard. I think Bottle Gnomes, this is important.
I remember Puzzle thought that was hilarious that I had it. It's just such do-nothing card in any other deck.
But it's so efficient in this one. There's another one that also sacrifices for its toughness. Yeah, there's another one. Let's pull that one up. The other one is...
it doesn't... are you talking about Bottle Golems?
Bottle Golems.
But it doesn't sacrifice itself. That's the key. You have to have... So one of the things I've honed in on mine
What's Bottle Golems?
Bottle Golems is just when it dies. It's
got it. That's not good enough.
Trample.
That's not good enough. Yeah.
Right.
Okay,
so
good.
Less interdependency, more independent operation. This card works on its own, whether you have other cards to go with it or not.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Vizkopa and ramp.
Good. Okay, so the cards that I want are Bottle Gnomes, I want Ginger Brute, I want Creeping Bloodsucker, and I want Stave Off. And frankly, I would like more than just Stave Off.
And we were discussing that.
Fair Basilica also is, and Drospits are also good ones here. So let's go back to my list here, and we can take a look at what we've got.
What do you have that I don't?
So this right here is just a package list for Dimir Houseguard. There's a lot of stuff that's really similar here. So let's find... Oh, man, by the way, the other card is a Golden Urn. I was thinking that would be a good one for you to swap out for your Luxor River Shrine because they're...
Well, so I've already got Luxor River Shrine pulled out. Luxor River Shrine was absolutely incredible in mid-power where you had time to tick it up.
Yeah.
But it's just not fast
If it's not in your opening hand, then it feels really, really bad.
If it were like still the old days of Tatiova combo where I just sit and dirtle while the combo players, try to control each other out of the game and jockey for position, I think Luxor River Shrine would still do just fine.
Yeah. So the cards that I've got in a sideboard here. So Creeping Bloodsucker almost certainly needs to be in there, and the same reason the Scholar of Atheros is, or any of the Extort creatures. The way to look at these cards, and I was about to put a thing out on Twitter about this, Creeping Bloodsucker is an unblockable 3-power creature that has lifelink for 2. That's the way to look at these cards.
Yeah. And there's a few others that are like that in my list, such as Servant of Timuret. It's basically Extort trigger, but without having to pay for it.
The only trouble with Servant being that it has to untap, so it's like
Servant
it's even
is
slower.
The most awkward.
Yeah, I think that one I like Servant because I like any effect that breaks parity on that kind of a thing where it's like everybody else is losing and I'm gaining, and it's resilient. Honestly, and it's a good blocker. The Regenerate allows you to tap it, so you can play it, block, regenerate, untap, drain, and then you can attack every turn. And I like that a lot.
Meditation puzzle, I think I might be on the edge.
Yeah. I see why you're playing it though, because it's another creature.
It's also just because it's been a while since I've played it I haven't drawn Servant in a very combat heavy game in a while.
Yeah.
And that's where it can shine more on its own merit.
So one of the things I wanted to point out here, and we've got Jin Shooting Star hopping in the chat. Welcome, my friend. Glad to have you here. A couple of other cards that we need to talk about, okay? The first of which is Cranial Plating.
Because you're so heavy on the artifacts. And honestly, Cranial Plating is one of those ones where...
It's dirty, dude.
It flies under the radar in just my mental process of brewing because I jump around between brews so much.
Dude, this card is center stage on my thought because I
Oh
build
yeah, you put
so
it in
much black.
everything.
Oh yeah, because well, it's like, well, are you playing more than 15 rocks? Like, or are you playing more than 15 artifacts? Because if you are, this is
Yeah.
always better than Bone Splitter. It's
What I'm
like,
looking forward to putting it in is Kalane's been on my radar for
oh
like
yeah,
ever
yeah,
since Baldur's Gate gave us more treasure.
yeah, yeah. So in this deck we have 26 artifacts. So this would be 27, and this thing is going to give a creature probably +5, and then if we lifelink it,
Yeah, then you're making that lifelink significant.
oh yeah. So this is a card that's on my radar. Creeping Bloodsucker should just be in the deck. I don't have it currently just because I don't know what I
It's a
would cut for
jumpstart
it.
card.
Yeah,
So
I just bought a bunch of
the
them and they were $2 a piece, unfortunately.
the
But
the day before flying to RIW, I was scrambling to get 2 cards for my deck,
they were
Infernal
hard to get.
Idol and Bloodsucker, because they're both jumpstart cards. One
Yep.
from Jumpstart 2021, one from 2022. And Alec actually brought me the Infernal Idol to finish the deck that I was
Awesome.
going to play.
So here's another card that I found a while back that I wanted to put by you, and that's Student of Ojutai. This is a card that a lot of
So
people don't
I
know
think
about.
I think so. For those that don't know, well, you have it on screen. The reason I don't play it is because I'm not playing as much removal. I think in a more controlling deck, for example, the more combo-oriented Vizkopa lists that have a lot of slots devoted to removal that are running like,
Or ramp.
well, so specifically the one that was played in the other tournament, that list had high teens of instants, and most of that was removal. And I think in that kind of deck, Student of Ojutai can do amazing and gain a
Yeah,
ridiculous
I
amount of
mean,
life.
look at this here. This deck has 24, 44, 50, 59 non-creature spells.
Whereas,
59.
so I've got a good amount of
You've got
instants,
24 creatures.
but
So that's the only thing.
so much of my deck, even sure, like there's artifacts, but they're all getting played in enchantments, but they're all getting played out before the turn I want to go off.
Yeah, this card
So
right here
just the
would be
sequencing of it messes with
this
it,
would look
makes it not work in mine.
right. This card would work better with a Epicure of Blood,
Yeah, and I had
or
in my
a
tournament
Marauding
build,
Blight Priest.
so that's a good cluster of cards to talk about. So there's also the life gain one. I think it's Heron of Hope.
Yep.
So Heron of Hope makes your life gain go up by 1, whereas Epicure and
It
Marauding
drains
Blight
1
Priest
for when
make
you gain life.
right. So more drain versus more life gain. So I think I like the draining ones better because they work better for chip damage in the mid game when you're trying to get people low enough that you can one-shot them.
Yep, the Extort, it's amazing with Extort.
Whereas the upside of Heron is because it's increasing your life gain, it can be multiplied by your number of Vizkopa triggers.
Yes.
So it's better for the turn you go off.
Yeah.
And
yeah.
ultimately, I think they're kind of comparable to Extort.
Yep.
Except in some ways they're more fragile, or
they're not as good. But I think that if the deck is if
it depends on the kind of triggers you go for. So like the way I've built mine, I'm saving all my life gain for that last turn. So it's harder to trigger Marauding Blight Priest to get the chip damage up front or to get the extra life gain from Heron.
Right.
So they don't work quite as well with just how I'm sequencing things again.
That makes sense.
There's a lot of finicky fine tuning with the card choice.
Totally. A card like Student of Ojutai enables you to cast Vizkopa, cast a rock, cast a draw spell with the activated ability, and basically drain forever. It's like Extort, right? Except that you need Vizkopa to do it, right? You're going to need to have Vizkopa out, or you basically, it relies on Vizkopa being there, and then once it is, then it's going to be better than Extort because it's free. But it does demand Vizkopa, and it's a 2/4. I mean,
I'm
it's
really
a
curious
2/4.
to see if we get any more Marauding Blight Priests to common.
Oh yeah, I think we will. We've gotten 2 of them now.
I'm really excited to see more white life gain payoffs. I think they're coming.
Give us a Johnny's Pride Mate. It's so easy, so easy.
Yeah, give us 3 more Celestial Unicorns.
Yep. Even if they're 4 mana, I don't care. We'll play them.
Yeah.
Because those cards, if we get like a number of them, then I like that quite a lot because we can run them out there. Opponents are going to be like, I don't know about that, and then they'll kill it,
Yeah,
and that's going to
and
reduce our aggro.
and that goes back to the creature focused versions of the deck we were talking about. Because imagine sacrificing one of those to
Reckoner's Bargain.
Yeah, there we go. The one that you gain life equal to its power or toughness.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So suddenly you're.
It might be mana cost. Might be mana cost. Let's see. I think it's mana cost because you gain 7 when you sack a Sojourner's Companion. Yeah, mana cost. Yeah, unfortunately.
Okay, never mind.
Yeah.
Well, if they cost 4, that's still a chunk.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, it's still a lot, right? Like,
oh, that's what I'm thinking of. I'm thinking of Bushmeat Poacher.
Bushmeat Poacher.
That's
yeah,
where you gain equal to toughness. There we go.
Yep.
Which,
so
the sacrifice cards are another one of those things where it's a little awkward with the timing. Part of the reason they were in there is, okay, I can sack Vizkopa in response to an aura, but at the same time, sure, there's this nice life gain associated with sacking. Maybe I can sack a creature on the turn I'm going off. But the problem is that it only works if you have a creature other than Vizkopa, because the way you need to layer it on the stack, you need to sacrifice to put the life gain on the stack. Then you need to activate Vizkopa. You can't activate Vizkopa if you sacrificed Vizkopa.
That's right. That's right.
So you have to have another creature on the field that's also disposable. So it gets a little awkward there.
Yeah, and that's why the rocks play a big role, because if we're going off, then we can always just sack a rock that we've already tapped or an artifact land that we've already tapped, and it's basically free, especially with the Deadly Dispute, because it's basically 1 mana. But that's not life gain. It's just more draw cards. So, so the question for me is going to be, how do we fit in? Particularly, I really like the Bottle Gnomes is just going to be a blocker. Same with Stygian of Ojutai. The Creeping Bloodsucker is very high priority. The Cranial Plating is good, but again, like the Cranial Plating is only going to come in when I feel like I have a free slot, because attacking isn't our MO. And I think that's the biggest concern.
Even with your high artifact count, I'm still not convinced that that Cranial Plating is the right call, because I think it might fall into the same category as a lot of the defensive lifelink that I just cut, where it's depending on your opponent to play in a certain way in order to make use of it.
Interesting. I don't know if that's necessarily the case. It's quite aggressive, right? Because you're basically.
But do you have creatures that you are okay throwing away in combat if it's not time to go off yet?
Yeah, no, I think like the big thing here is that a lot of these creatures are ones that I wouldn't be excited about attacking with unless I was trying to kill the table, because they're going to die in combat. But what we do have is we have Basilica Screecher, Dimir Houseguard, we have Kingpin's Pet. All of those are evasive, right? Yeah. And so we're able to do stuff there that's pretty efficient. But again, it's something that if somebody played it, I wouldn't blame them for it. If somebody cut it, I wouldn't blame them for it. I think it's one of those cards that's kind of like dependent. It's like flavor, salt to taste, you know?
Yeah.
The other, okay. And then the other one was, let's see. The other one was the protection spells.
Wait a second. I just realized you don't have Crushing Disappointment in your list.
I don't.
Tell me more, because I love this card for this deck.
Yeah. Crushing Disappointment is a great choice in this deck. I think that it could be an easy sub for like Succumb to Temptation.
Yeah, that's exactly what I was looking at yours, that specifically the double black, because of how finicky this deck can be about color pips.
Yeah, I don't have any trouble with the pips, mainly because I'm ramping and there's it's all fixing my mana. It's just, the mana's never been a problem. The damage isn't super premium to me. I've played it a lot in like Witherbloom Apprentice, and it always ended up coming out because I wasn't really bought into needing to go fast. But this deck is a little bit different in that it would like to do the damage, and we can afford it. We can afford to take the 2 because we gain so much life off of Extort and these other effects. So yeah, I mean, I could totally see Succumb coming out for that, and it would be nice to have another 4 mana draw spell that I could tutor for if I've already cast Siphon Mind. So let's just make that change now. We'll just do this here, and we'll add...
To me, the huge impact is it's playing the same role as an Extort card, where it's chipping away at opponents too. Even if, your opponents aren't banding together to combat the highest life total at the table in a successful manner, you can do a little bit of the work yourself without looking like you're comboing yet.
Yeah, I think another card that kind of fits into this category too is Siphon Soul. or
Mhm.
Siphon Soul and Blood Tithe. Both are
Yep.
basically cards that just work without our commander. And
And
I think
that's
that
going
we
back to the I go ahead.
yeah, I think those are cards that I might be wrong for not playing. I think that cards that just do that, you know, because again, it's like it's just another extort card, and the
I think
best
for
thing in
your
this deck
deck,
is extort. The extort in white and black is
I think for
insane,
your
right?
deck, they make great sense, or more specifically for your desire to maybe take a big chunk and reset with that
What would
card
they come
style,
in
they work
for?
great.
Would it be like Font of Vigor?
Um,
Because a lot of my onboard stuff are these smaller ones like Golden Egg, Lembas, Potion of Healing. Sunspring Expedition's not small, but it's like, you know, it's there. Um,
I would
or
maybe something like Faith's Fetters, honestly,
Faith's Fetters.
or e- Eagles is in place of a land, so that's not the right answer.
It could be like Rest for the Weary is pretty good because it's a 1 to 4 ratio if you played a land, but it's not really instant speed because you need to play a land. So it's like Font of Vigor comes to mind because it's pretty spendy, right? It's 3 for 7, which is
Right,
like,
which is just above that two
yeah,
for one
I think
ratio.
this one can go. And I think what we'll add in
Really,
here, yeah,
you were big on Fontavigur before. I'm kind of surprised to hear
I
that.
like it, but I'm
So,
looking at it again and I'm seeing we have so many onboard sources of life gain.
so in this case specifically, Fontavigor's strength is that you play it out early and then it can't be countered when you actually use it for life gain. Sure, it's expensive, but it's relatively uncounterable.
Yep, it always
So
works.
you're trading that anti-counter spell tech for more independent operation where you can play these other two draining cards early in the game without needing to combo off to bring
Yeah,
down life totals if you have plenty of other life gain in your hand to
right,
kill people with and you just
right.
need to chip away.
I think that the same vein though, we have to ask if Bloodsucker would be better in that slot.
Oh yeah, probably.
Bloodsucker
I think
early
so.
is like Bloodsucker early does a lot of damage.
And it being free the turn you go off is just
Yeah,
so massive.
yeah.
So another aspect of this deck
This
that's
is like
slowly
more the
shifting your mind
slow
over
burn.
time. So the idea that you have three opponents, that's something that when I started building Vizkopa, I leaned into that super hard. The idea of this deck only works because of Congregate, War Report, things like that, counting multiple opponents, multiple board states.
Yep.
And I've slowly leaned away from that. Over time, with every revision, I've cut one or two more cards like that to where I can still make a 2 or 3 player end game work for me. And I think Bloodsucker is another example, just like Extort,
Yep.
of where they do get weaker if one person gets knocked out. You know, if the
Yeah, they
gut
do.
player kills the Gretchen,
But
then
again, the
you're
extort is about softening people up. It's not about the combo turn,
right.
which
Yeah,
it can be about the combo
I
turn, but
I absolutely think the Extort and Bloodsucker and those cards are still worth it. It's
oh
just
yeah, yeah.
something to keep in mind.
And they're also keeping us alive, right? Like
Yeah,
they're acting like our commander. They're just
yeah.
and another way to look at it, and this is actually a fun thing that I realized is every one of those cards is like having a Witherbloom Apprentice in your deck, right? Like
Yeah.
and you've got a whole bunch of them. Like Thrall Parasite's the same way. These extort effects are so good.
If there was another like 3 or 4
Oh,
extort
dude,
creatures
I
available to
would never
common,
play
I
anything
think.
but Orzhov.
But well, I was going to say I think I would lean more towards your extreme ramp version of the
Yep,
deck,
yep.
just because extort gets pretty pricey, but my god, is it effective?
So why are we playing Martyr of Sands?
Why are we?
Why aren't
Wait.
we?
Oh, so actually, yeah. I told you I had a list of things that I was considering that didn't make it, and that and Honorable Scout were towards the top of that list. Honorable Scout is not in either of our lists.
Gain a life, 2 life for each black and red creature opponents control.
Yep. And that goes back to the idea of me cutting cards that are dependent on our opponents to play a certain way. The ceiling on the Scout is very high, but the floor is also really low if you just aren't playing people that are playing creature decks in those colors.
Yeah.
And then Martyr of Sands goes back to the idea of what I was talking about earlier, where the way my deck wants to play out cards is I play out a lot of stuff early, and then even later, I play a lot of permanents out early, and then I don't necessarily have a lot of stuff in hand.
Yeah.
So like maybe I'm holding a Radiant Fountain and a removal spell and, you know, 1 life gain card, and great, I have 1 white card in hand, so I could sacrifice that to gain 3 life. It's just very variable, and it only works once, and it needs to be with Vizkopa.
Yeah.
So
I think
that's kind of why it's not in there for me.
I really like cards like Martyr of Sands too, because you play it out, people kill it, and it's 100% going to reduce your overall aggro at the table if something like this needs to eat removal to die.
I think if Martyr of Sands cost 1 and a white and it was a 1/3, I would be a lot more tempted to play.
I mean, the fact that it's 1, I mean, we got to think about how much life this fucking thing gains. Like, if we have...
but you're thinking about ceiling. I'm thinking about average.
No, I'm thinking base. I always start with the base. So, like, if we have 2 white cards in hand,
whereas I'm thinking I don't usually have more than 1 at end game.
Oh, see, in my playtesting and in my experience with this deck, I frequently have between 2 and 4 white cards in hand. And that's why it's like, dude, if it's 4 in hand, if it's 4 in hand, this is the most efficient life gain spell we can possibly play that isn't free. Because it's going to be 1 mana to activate. And if we have 4 in hand, that's a gain 12. If we have 3, it's 1 mana gain 9. If we have 2, it's 1 mana gain 6. And all of those are above rate. And it's a blocker. There's so many different layers to this one that like I kind of wonder, you know, whether this
I guess the blocking utility is the aspect I hadn't thought of there, where you do the classic, you know, block then sack. But to me, that's barely covering for the weakness of it dying to sweepers.
It does die to sweepers, sure. But again, I think the thing is that when people see that we don't have a lot of things in play that gain life, they're going to discount what we're doing. And I think like this is one of the things we've talked about a bunch in terms of like how people address a Vizkopa player. They're going to be looking for things in play that gain you life. And they're going to be looking to see how much mana you have. And furthermore, Vizkopa is very scary, but it's not as scary as Abdel and Gretchen in the immediate. Because Abdel or Gretchen, or any other combo deck, like a Malcolm Kedis, Malcolm Breaches, something like that. So those decks, when they combo off, you don't get another turn. Whereas Vizkopa, you actually might not die from it, right? Like there's ways out.
So, quick question. Are you seeing Martyr of Sands as uncounterable in the same vein as the Expedition? Sunspring Expedition.
It's not that it's uncounterable, it's that it's really funny if somebody counters it.
Well, to me, if I'm playing this mid-game,
which we're both playing, we're really, you know, it's kind of, I think you think I'm going for the long game, but it's actually, it's
well, no, I'm just, that's just pulling a game.
Yeah, kind of just like
in order to think through
like 7 or 8 kind of thing.
So, well, even turn 5, 6.
Oh, wow.
I think when you play Sunspring Expedition, there's at least 2 turns until it goes off, right? Even if you have like a Terramorphic Expanse, like there is a clock that is observable,
very telegraphed,
and it makes it a lot less likely to be countered because people know they have time. It's not an immediate threat. Font of Vigor is kind of the same way. You're not going to be activating at the same turn. They can see it's expensive. And because it doesn't have the creature getting hit by board wipe weakness, it's a lot more of a no-brainer to play it out as early as possible. Those are the cases that we have both talked about being worth including, and how they are better. To me, the difference is this one, when you play it out, someone can say, how many cards do you have in hand? And their imagination can say, oh, you have 4 cards in hand, 3 of those are white. Maybe one of them is white. But I think that Martyr of Sands is also a lot more susceptible to that. Opponents seeing combo decks is always right on the doorstep. And making them evaluate you more as a threat, but also making them more likely to counter the Martyr.
Yeah, you know, and one of the things I think that's really important to note is that, like, because it's so hard to kill us, because we gain so much life in this deck, like, all of our combo cards also keep us alive, and our removal is exclusively unconditional fuck your commander up, right? Like all of
Yeah.
it.
Stop.
This is, and we should actually be clear. This is another design thing. Because you die to commander damage, your kill spells need to be destroy almost anything, almost always. And so, uh,
Going back to
so
the
with
combo non-combo meta thing, like my removal when there's combo decks in play, it's usually stopping the combo deck.
oh yeah,
When there's
100%
not when
combo
there's not a
creatures,
combo deck at the
commanders.
table, yeah, commanders are really big
That's
targets,
it.
or anything that gains life.
Even the gaining life, like we could probably outgain that, right? But you
Oh
could. I
no.
mean,
So if there's an extort creature on the field early, that thing needs to go for me. Like if they gain 9-10 life and no one else is treating them as a threat, it's absolutely screwing
you
my
know what?
game.
I kind of like that though. I kind of like that other people are going to be upset that they're gaining life, and it's going to
No,
split
no,
our
no, no.
aggro,
No.
right?
So this actually came up in the tournament for me. So there was mono white Mother of Runes, white weenie player. They had an extort creature. They were gaining life. If it had, and Puzzle was sitting at the table with Gretchen. He had bad draws. He was out. If he had been in the game, he probably would have won. But point is, that person was gaining life, and Conrad was, like me, another burn deck. And me and Conrad teamed up to get around the Mother of Runes protection to kill the extort creature because it was a threat to both of us.
Yeah, yeah.
But if he had been a non-symmetrical damage dealer, if he had been another combat deck, I think he would have just let the extort creature alone, and I would have been completely screwed, and he would have killed me because I'm the life game player that he doesn't like, that he's scared of, and the other combo deck is not doing anything at the moment. And then he would have been banking on, I can get through the life gain of a single extort creature eventually, and it's fine if they stay at 35 life, and it means the Vizkopa player is never going to go off, and I'm going to kill them at my leisure.
Yeah, yeah. I think the main thing, the core of this is that if you're playing this deck, your removal should be unconditional, mostly. And that might mean playing some 3-mana removal, but you're a ramp
Oh yeah,
deck. You
like
play
Crib
lots of
Swap.
lands. Yeah. Crib swap type stuff. Yeah. Or like unmake, that kind of thing.
Or even bake into a pie.
Well, yeah, like and you know, this whole time we've been talking, I meant to ask you. So, baked into a pie creates a food token,
Yep.
which is really nice, and it's 4 mana, destroy a creature. So there's a lot to
Yep.
like there. Just unconditionality. It's not super efficient, but the life gain on it, you know, being on a permanent, it's good.
I made use of the food token last night.
Yeah, yeah,
And I needed it because I was out of life gain in hand. The value from it absolutely mattered.
yeah, yeah. So the other card that for my deck is Tidy Conclusion. Again, expensive, but look, 27 mana, 27 artifacts, and that doesn't include treasures, blood tokens, and food. It doesn't include those things, right? So like, is this something that should be in there for like safe passage, for example? I have safe passage because I want to protect my extort creatures from a sweeper in some cases, and it also stops commander damage.
That's right. This is the one that we were comparing to Sever Soul,
Yep.
which I cut just because it's so expensive. And the upside that I didn't realize when we were talking about this before is that Tidy Conclusions is an instant, which is
It
a
is.
pretty big mark in its favor.
It's pretty good. Yeah.
But so,
like, what would it
that,
replace? I mean,
well, I'm
like
still
Oubliette?
not convinced it's worth it. Like 5 mana is just so much, and that's part of why Gary is out, because 5 is an awkward number with this deck.
Maybe Oubliette should just be crib swap instead.
I like both.
I like Oubliette, but I also think that if our main problem is combo and commanders, and we don't necessarily know where the commander is going, we want to be able to deploy that thing and get rid of it. The benefit with Oubliette is we say that thing never comes at us again.
I brought this up whenever I was having the discussion with Clay and Derek and Ruffian, and we were kind of pulling in the, Oubliette ban discussion. Not banned, that's the consensus, but just debating both sides of it. One of the points that I made was I see Oubliette as a value piece because, in effect, when targeting a commander, Oubliette and the other lockdown auras are kind of, they're doing the job of 2 removal spells.
Yeah.
If you play a regular destroy spell and they replay their commander, that commander's still a threat to you, and maybe you need to use a second removal spell. But if you get Oubliette on their commander, and maybe it takes them 2 turns to find a way around Oubliette to get their commander back out from under it, but you bought yourself more time before they were able to read it to get their commander back So there's this idea of slowing down the game and buying value in the form of time. And specifically, I think that's really valuable to Vizkopa
Yeah,
because of the
yeah.
inevitability of your ramp engine and the way you accumulate resources. So that's why I am really in favor of Oubliette in Vizkopa,
Yeah. It's
because of the sure, it's got an okay floor. You remove a creature, they sack out from under it, or it's just, you know, a random value creature that's gone, or they just remove the enchantment. Something. It's a 1-for-1 trade at its floor.
yeah, yeah.
But the ceiling is potentially knocking a deck
player,
out of the game
yeah,
for several turns at minimum, which slows
but
the game down in a way that
potentially
makes
a
it
lot
very
more. And it's
yeah,
specifically their commander, right? Like, because the
yeah,
commander damage is so important. That's the same
yeah,
reason why I have Planner Disruption in here. But I was actually thinking Planner Disruption might also come out for just some other you know, unconditional instant speed kill spell, because I want the ability to because again, combo creatures are a big deal. And what my deck has that yours doesn't is I have one more way to shut down commanders forever, which is Protective
yes.
Sphere and the Righteous
So
Aura. So we
I wanted
have
to
these
talk about
things,
that.
right? We haven't talked about this, but one of the most broken uses of Righteous Aura is Vizkopa Guildmage. I mean, like,
Yeah,
we're gaining a lot of life. Righteous Aura says pay life to turn off commander damage. Let's say that, okay?
yep.
It
And I
also,
got to turn off Clay's Dargo several
oh
times, or at
yeah,
least
or you
two.
turn off a Reckless Fireweaver when they go to
Yep.
combo off. You turn off a Witty Roastmaster. I mean, holy shit, these cards are
Well,
really, really good. Really good.
yeah, because it's only the next time, it doesn't help as much with combos. But if they specifically need this instance of damage to generate a treasure to continue the loop, you still can interfere a little bit.
Yeah, so turn off.
Sometimes.
Yeah, so the next time it would do it, prevent that damage.
Yeah.
Protective Sphere is also kind of weird that way. Prevent
Yep.
all damage that would be dealt to you this turn by a source of your choice. This one's different. This one
That one
does
works
turn it
better,
off.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, in terms of things that you have in your deck that I would like to include in mine, Protective Sphere is absolutely at the top of
It
that.
is, but we've
It's
talked about what it takes to turn it on, right? Like you're
yeah.
playing Lantern of Revealing for that very reason.
So we mentioned color pips in the deck earlier, and both of us have very heavily emphasized rocks that produce any color mana, and we both have a decent number of lands that can produce both colors as well. So that's great. We produce a lot of white and black, but there's only a certain subset of those, it's not all of them, that can produce any color. And that matters for Protective Sphere, because Protective Sphere, you have to match the color of the mana you're paying in.
Yeah, so
to a
Felwar
color of the
Stone,
thing you're preventing.
Felwar Stone, Bonder's Ornament, Commander Sphere, Fountain of no, not Commander Sphere. So it's sorry, go back. It's Felwar Stone, Bonder's Ornament, Fountain of Ichor, Honored Heirloom, Network Terminal, and that's actually it right now. It's not a huge number. I probably should change that a little bit.
Yeah.
Maybe.
So me and Ryan are kind of falling on opposite sides of this over-under game, where we're trying to guess, do we have enough any color mana sources that we can consistently shut down the colors of threats we need to whenever it matters. And it honestly, we're both guessing, and who knows who's right. I don't have it in because I don't feel like I have enough any color sources yet, and Ryan says that it's so powerful that even with his moderate amount, he thinks it's worth it, and he might be right, but it's certainly has a ton of potential. I mean, for me, I think
Letter of Acceptance could come in, and actually, so what we'll do is Letter of Acceptance will replace Infernal Idol, because it's literally it's 2 mana draw 1 or 3 mana draw 2 and lose 2. And this one actually makes any color.
Whenever Lobert had his recent episode on mana rocks, and he rated all the sack draw 2 rocks really low, and he was talking about the amount
I love them.
paid in.
I love them.
Well, I think most decks, they're absolutely useless, but specifically super heavy ramp decks like this, that's like the niche where they work
well, and control decks, right? Being able to say, I'm low on resources, end of turn, crack it, draw 2 cards is unbelievably good. And I've been doing this in Crackling Drake and a lot of other decks when everybody else said that they were bad, because it was like, my rock, when I flood out on mana, makes me not flooded anymore.
Super cycling.
It's amazing.
Lobert was talking about, like, okay, if you play the rock on X turn and then you tap it for this many turns and then you sacrifice it, turn 7, 8, you generated this much mana, but you paid this much to cast it, this much to activate it, so you're down this much mana, and a lot of that was front loaded when it matters more.
Yep.
And to me, the one thing he was missing was the fact that you ramped at a time when it got you to
when you needed it. Yeah.
So you hit the double spelling window earlier, and then you sack your rock once you're to the point where you have sufficient mana to do all the things at once.
Exactly.
So you still have this timing positive effect that is hard to quantify.
So then here's another question. So Sisay's Ring and Urgolem's Eye are good. They also don't make colors, and we extort.
Yeah.
So I like these cards a lot, but is there a possibility that we just want to have like Mana Geode and maybe Lantern Revealing?
So that was one of the
I'm going to do that.
Things I was scratching my head over, was whether to replace one of them specifically with Felwar Stone.
I'm going to do
as
both.
a way to get towards that. And I honestly, this goes back to the idea of running out of value, and the reason I play Bacon to a Pie is sometimes you just don't get your draw spells, even though you have a million of them.
Yep.
And having a little extra value packed into these cards, the extra 1 mana from Urgolem's Eye, the extra 3 life from a food token from Bacon to a Pie, those can sometimes stretch you to where you have just enough resources to do the thing to get the win. And so that's why they're still in mine, is because I'm trying to stretch for value, and it makes me nervous to take them out, even though the colorless is sometimes frustrating. Like what I did after the tournament to kind of move in that direction is the extra rocks I included. I just made sure I was including extra any color mana there, and I removed some of the colorless lands like Study Hall that I had in, and that was my token contribution to making colorless mana from the rocks I still had less hurtful.
Totally. Now Clay has made a really good point here. Opal Palace and Study Hall make mana of any color. I think these ones are already pretty insane.
So I pulled out Study Hall specifically because the one time I've ever had it in play, not having it produce colored mana, without filtering, really hurt me, and the 1 mana difference it made delayed me a turn from comboing. It was really hurtful having to try to get colored mana filtered through that to satisfy my pips.
Right. Yeah, and I think that could come up as a problem, but again, like if you're using it for Protective Sphere, then the point of the Protective Sphere is just to not die, right? And so it still serves that role really importantly. And again, like if we're playing a lot of mana rocks, our colors are almost always going to be very good. So I think like even, a question around like the, Sisay's Ring and Urgolem's Eye, I would really like to have those in there. And maybe I'll cut something else for them. Like, I don't know. I mean, but like cutting those also means that we're going to be able to it's just going to be more efficient, right? Like our ramp is just going to be more, it's going to have more of those turns where you're like playing a bunch of ramp cards into other things, right? Because they're all coming to play untapped. So Lantern of Revealing is the only one here that I'm a little iffy on because it's so expensive.
There's a lot of people that were really, really high on the value Lantern of Revealing can provide. I'm not one of them. That's not what's carrying this. It is mostly in there because it is any color mana
that can do something.
Yeah, if you're holding up mana for Righteous Aura or something like that, and you don't have anything else, like you're holding up a removal spell for if the combo player goes for it, you're holding up mana for if the combat player hits you, and then you don't need either of those this turn.
Yep, then you do it, right, which is Bonder's Ornament. It's the same, same concept.
It's not where you want to be, but once again, going back to I have very much leaned towards value and making sure I don't run out of resources.
100%. And you can see that here too, right? You can see it with the letter, the Commander Sphere, the Bonder's Ornament, the Network Terminal, the Locket, like Mind Stone. These cards are all here for that purpose of helping make sure that we don't run out of gas. We're basically playing almost all of the mana rocks that crack to draw cards. The only ones
I'm not using any of the ones that only sack to draw one. I need card advantage.
Yeah.
Like straight card advantage.
Yeah.
If I'm putting them in.
which could be a reason to actually. Oh, you know what I should do? I'll cut Locket here. Locket is worse than Locket is worse than the
Infernal.
Infernal. Yeah, Infernal only makes black,
Yeah.
but that doesn't really matter. And it's cheaper. The life loss doesn't matter either, so I think that one's good. So I think what we've got here is we've got two decks that are actually relatively close that are playing off of the same fundamentals, which are all about having a mixture of a small package of really big life gain spells that are instant speed, and then a bunch of onboard permanent sources of life gain, whether that's extort, food token, some sort of lembus or healing potion or bottle gnomes or ginger brute, those kinds of things, and having kill spells that can kill anything, right? Very hard removal. In a deck with a
because you're only going to have one, maybe two pieces of removal in a game.
Exactly.
For my lower total, anyway.
Yeah, I think the math comes out to about 3 in our decks based on the amount of draw we have. Because of if you have 11 of a card in your deck, you are going to draw one of them in the first like 10 cards. And so when you start to draw more cards, that number starts to go up and up and up with the number that we'll get. So I think about 3 is about what we're looking for, and that doesn't include sweepers, which are also removal. So that there's that too. So yeah, the fundamentals being a mix of onboard permanent base life gain that's basically uncounterable when we resolve our commander, extort to soften people up, hard removal, a lot of ramp, and a lot of card draw. And the idea being that we're going to combo at about that average turn. It's like 7 to 9. We're going to be looking to do our combo. It doesn't have to be complete. We can go half chub and deliver a big hit to everybody, but we don't necessarily need to kill them. We have a lot of tools to get there even when they're low, like a Crypt Rats or a Pestilence, or you don't want to leave them low, and neither do I, but if I have to, I will do it, right? Especially because that life gain is part of our combo. So the beauty of it being that even if we don't fully combo off, we have all these sources of life gain that mean that, look, we've got extra turns to work with, where if a lot of decks out there aren't going to get those extra turns. The next cards that we're going to be looking to find room for here as things evolve, maybe as certain cards show whether they're better or worse, is going to be cards like Martyr of Sands, cards like Creeping Bloodsucker, Student of Ojutai, and then the Protection Suite. So having Benevolent Blessing, Chomano's Blessing, Stave Off, right? Mm-hmm. And I think those cards, there's even an argument here that what I could do is cut Planar Disruption and cut maybe Faith's Fetters.
Faith's Fetters I was eyeing as one of the weaker ones. It feels like you still have it in because of the duality of life gain plus removal.
Yeah, I mean, it hits...
In reality, it's a lot of mana, so you aren't going to be using the life gain to combo like almost ever.
Here's the thing, though. This hits lands. No activated abilities.
Right.
So it hits lands. It's tutorable with Dimir Houseguard. It hits everything. The 4 life is one where I just don't imagine that if I'm playing this reactive spell that I'm also going to try and cast Vizkopa, activate it, and do it. So the 4 life gain is not actually that huge to me. But I think it could be like Planar Disruption that comes out for Benevolent Blessing. And
Faith's Fetters says no activated abilities unless they're mana abilities. So it being able to go on lands doesn't stop them from producing mana.
Good point. So this turns off a Pestilence. It turns off can turn off a Cranial Plating. It can turn off
I don't know about Pestilence that much.
Pestilence is good for us.
Yeah.
Pestilence is good for us. And the pingers are usually good for us too, because they're softening everybody up. Mm-hmm. But basically the question here is I would like to get a couple of flexible protection spells that can go on other people's things too, as part of our not dying to combo, but also being the combo that can survive. And so, maybe it looks like cutting a rock. Maybe it looks like cutting, something like Rest for the Weary. It could be cutting Faith's Fetters. It could be cutting maybe a draw spell. We have 20 of them. It's a lot. It's a
Yeah,
lot of draw spells.
You're a little higher on the draw
But
spells
we
than
should.
me. So once again, one of those places where we diverge is
1,
I
2,
go a
3,
little
4,
heavier on
5, 6.
building the resources in play, and you go a little heavier on the ramp and draw.
Well, the draw actually that I've listed here is probably not listed the same way for you as it is for me because I double
Oh, that's right.
categories things. So I have
Yep.
1, 2, 3, 4. So things that I can just play that draw are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
And then I've also
10,
got stuff like
11,
Bushmeat
12,
Poacher
13, 14,
that's
14.
categorized. It's categorized more like protection and life gain
Yep.
as opposed to card draw.
Yeah, I have 14 draw
my use
spells that I
cases.
can just cast to draw cards. Everything else is drawing cards just as a way to anti-flooding, right? It's like attached to the rocks. So I could potentially cut a draw spell. Maybe it would be like...
Succumb. Well, no, you already had that coming out.
Yeah, I cut that out for the crushing.
Honestly, I know I'm a broken record on these, but I think it's the sack to draw.
I'm pretty happy with those.
So
they've been really good.
The treasure on Deadly Dispute is a really interesting thing that me and you talked about a little bit. We talked about it in terms of some of the equipment that generate treasures as well, and Undercity Scrounger, that if a creature's died this turn, tap to generate a treasure. And I even brought up Giant Skewer, where whenever the equipped creature deals damage to a creature, generate a food. It's bad. It's not good enough. But the general idea of building more resources in play, and Deadly Dispute is a little bit of a nod to that, where it gives you one treasure, and it doesn't give you the life gain of Reckoner's Bargain, but that treasure could be the 1 mana that makes you able to combo off a turn early.
Right, because what are we sacrificing with this? Well, it might be a creature if it's an extort creature, and in that case we're going up on mana. But if it's a mana rock or a land, we're actually staying mana neutral for the next turn if we're going to use it. So I think Deadly Dispute fits that category really well. Whereas Reckoner's Bargain is quite interesting because in our combo turn, we can use this to probably like a gain 3 is probably what it looks like.
Which honestly isn't a great...
It's not a great rate.
Yeah. And that's honestly why I was looking at it.
I think Reckoner's Bargain can go. Yeah.
Because if you're aiming to use it in your combo turn, it's subpar, and it can be too conditional if you're trying to use it as card draw earlier in the game.
So let's get Benevolent Blessing, and what is it? Show Manos or Stave Off? Feels like...
I think Stave Off, definitely. The one cheaper matters a lot. Because ultimately what I've run into a lot playing it is the mid game is really decision intensive in terms of how you use your mana, because you can usually do 2 things, but it's which things are you deploying now and what are you saving mana for reactively, and how greedy can you be giving
about deploying your rocks and drawing cards,
or about holding up removal. Do you need it this turn or not?
So I am going to do Show Manos just because the permanent nature of it is really strong. But I think that if a person wanted to play Stave Off instead, they would be perfectly fine to do it.
And that's what I've done. I've gone with Stave Off, and I don't have the other 2 in at the moment.
Right.
Even though they're absolutely powerful.
Yeah, because basically what I did is I cut a removal spell, but I have a removal spell, right? Like the protection is going to do that for combo, and I think that's going to be perfectly fine. And I'll test these and see which one I like more. The more of these we play, the more Safe Passage could just become Stave Off as well, right?
I still think Befoul might be the other removal spell to cut if you're going to cut any of them.
But Befoul just is a removal spell, and I think that's the key reason why I won't cut it, because I'm not going to go below 10 kill spells. What's that?
Can't hit black.
Not that big of a deal to me. The rest of it does. Our sweepers do. The black things that I care about are not as many, extorting black creatures, sure. But like, again, extort's kind of funny in that like one person is gaining more life, but the other 2 are the other, let's see, 1, 2.
Whereas to me, one person having a life total is the worst case scenario.
I guess that is pretty bad, isn't it? Yeah. But that's the only thing then that I would really care about. Like, do I care about a Tormod? Do I care about like maybe like a Gloomfang Mauler. I mean, I don't know, Troll of Khazad-dûm maybe, but again, these are like very niche cards. Maybe a Sir
Mhm.
Conrad that I can't kill, but when is a Sir Conrad ever killing us? They're
I
just
got
not.
real close. My game 3, the Sir
I
Conrad was
I
inches
just
away.
I just don't think that's likely. Sir Conrad is our friend. Sir Conrad, we're like
So
buddies.
I've heard Clay talk about Conrad being a slower, grindier deck, and he tried to make it more aggro with
Yeah, it can be
his
any of them
Rats
really.
build. But the Conrad build I faced at the tournament was very aggressive. He
Yes,
was using
yes. I played
rituals to
against him
boost out
too.
much faster. It was a cool deck.
It was, yeah. I think Sir Conrad still, though, they're not gaining a ton of life. They're dealing a ton of
Mhm.
damage to everybody symmetrically, and we're
Yeah,
the
when
only
they're
ones that
aggressive,
gain
it's more
life.
like Suicide Black a
Yeah,
little bit.
exactly. Yeah, yeah, like the rats build. So cool. Well, I'm really happy with where we've landed here. We've made a couple of
Mhm.
additions here. I think you found some stuff that you kind of want for your build too. And fundamentally they're very, very similar. They're kind of flavor to taste. Um,
Mhm.
and this is a great deck. I think that for people out there that want to play combo while having some defensibility, not only in just being hard to kill because of your life gain, but also because your combo doesn't need to happen all at once. You're, playing some actual kill spells and sweepers to fight back. This is a great choice, and we have evidence, right? Like an unoptimized version of this list took down a 46-person tournament in Detroit.
44, but yeah.
44 under your piloting. So for folks of you out there looking for a cool combo deck in Orzhov, I think this is your home. This is a really good place to be. We have a
If you
lot of
like if you like combo, but your play group really is just
hates
going to
combo.
murder you instantly because Simic.
And look,
Yep.
here's the other thing we should mention. If your play group is not playing blue, there are problems, okay? Because this deck, this is like Zada, okay? So when Zada is at a table without blue players, you're just cackling to the bank. Because the one thing that really sucks in Zada, other than sweepers, is counter spells. You play
Yeah.
Zada and get countered, and you just cry rivers of tears. It's
So
very unfun. This is the
I would
same
say
thing.
there's more counterplay outside blue. What I haven't run up against as much, but I know is out there is instant speed life gain. And if someone can gain surprising me with 8 life at instant speed, they can absolutely wreck my game plan. Be the only person left alive, but be the only person left alive, and clap back at me hard
Could
when
be.
I've emptied my hand because I thought I had them.
Yeah, the thing is though, is that we're gaining life too. And we're the better
Right,
life
right.
gain deck, right? So
But
they could gain life and they
that's
could get out of it, but I
that's why
honestly,
I'm going back to the empty hand
yeah,
and
yeah.
wasting my resources.
And I haven't seen that happen. Every time I've played this deck, I'm just like just flush with cards. So many cards. It's crazy. So I guess that's been my experience with it. Is just I have a lot. I feel like a control deck that doesn't actually have as much removal, but I have a lot of cards and a lot of resources in play. Right? Like we could
Mhm.
always just sacrifice our artifacts to get the things that we need to combo off again. So if a person like gains life and stays in the game, I think our odds of winning are still very high unless they're literally about to kill us with a commander, right? If they're not, I think we're going to outgrind them. And that's what I've seen in 1v1s with Vizkopa, is that I'm just like, dude, how the fuck do I kill this deck? Like, it's like really, really hard.
How many times have you used the life gain ability on Vizcopa? Because I have never
The
activated
life
it
link?
a single time. Yeah.
Oh,
Sorry,
like
yes. The
never,
life link ability.
never,
Okay. I
never.
was kind of doing mental calculus in my head because to me, there's so much in the deck that is sacrifice, use this once, or cast a spell, use it once, that I really don't see it as a deck that can grind for value quite as much in terms of if I miss my chance to go off here, if someone stops me from killing them and then they have more life gain after that, am I really going to be able to come back for it? And I don't see the deck as being able to come back quite as
Wow.
hard
I've
as you
lost to a
do.
lot of Vizkopa. I'll be honest. I've Bobby's in my local meta, and I've lost to Vizkopa a lot because he's usually the one playing it, and then we're tuning it
Mhm.
together. And he's very good at piloting it. And
So
mhm.
is it possible that you have a little bit of bias in terms of how you view it being flush with cards because of seeing him still have cards in hand, but not necessarily knowing whether they were impactful or not.
It's possible they weren't impactful, but cards are cards. We never know if they're good or not. Like, you know, like you see somebody who's got 6 cards in hand and you have no idea whether it's 5 lands or not.
Yeah,
and so
I'm just reaching, trying to make the calculus make sense in my head.
Totally. And I should say too that what adds strength to this argument is that my meta has always been, or the local meta I play in, it's not my meta, it's the local meta I play in, but the local meta that I play in is so hostile to combo. So when he sits down and he's playing, he's like, you know, he's like got his chastity belt on. He's like, you know, he's got his like padded suit. He's in his like bubble. He's like ready to get beaten down from like turn 2 onward, right? And the only times that doesn't happen is when there's like somebody doing Drake Flicker or somebody playing Gretchen, right? Or somebody playing Tatiova. And then he's got, and that's when Vizkopa is the utmost scariest, is that you have
a scapegoat,
dude. And this is like, okay, so like we got to talk about like how this deck matches up when you put it in a pod, right? Because this is the other thing. The game theory here, if there is, and there probably will be, another combo player and they're doing infinite stuff where they end the game all at once, you are second scariest. And that is a phenomenal place to be. Phenomenal. Like, you are not going to get as much interaction because that Gretchen player or that Tatiova player has an untapper or a scout. And you're just like cackling because like, yeah, you just sit there with extort creatures and you don't need to do shit. Like, you don't need to do anything. Wait till they're dead, stockpile resources, deploy removal when you are going to die, and then when they're gone, untap, win the game.
On the other hand,
because when they go, the counter spells go, right? Like,
on the other hand, being the second combo deck at the table, fantastic. Being the third, not so great. So like the one game I lost,
that could be. That could be.
And the one I lost last night, both had 2 other combo decks at the table. And what happens is because there's 2 decks at the table that don't care about life totals, there's less total life pressuring.
That's a good point.
So life totals don't come down as quick, and you don't reach the threshold where you can kill everyone.
That's a good point. Yeah, we are kind of relying on having a balanced pod, which would look like us, and then some combination of like aggro mid range, and then a combo, because it's 30 to 40% of the meta is combo, so 1 to 2 decks at a table.
Yeah, and honestly, so your local meta is more combat intensive, whereas the online competitive meta is a little more combo intensive. And what we saw was the mixed meta, I think, that we encountered at RIW, I think is a little closer to your.
It is. Yeah. Well, meta. And it's more, and it's closer to representative. We have to be clear about that. Like, I really strongly believe that like there's an, hot take time, so take this with a grain of salt. But I think that couple things. Combo is good in this format.
Yeah.
A lot of people are playing combo because they think it's the only thing to play. And the reason they think that is because they came from cPDH. And it's absolutely different here. When you're playing in cPDH, if you aren't playing combo, you probably are doing it wrong, because everybody is turboing as fast as they possibly can at the expense of so many resources. They're going to mold a 4 to find their land, Dark Ritual, Thassa's Oracle Consultation kind of stuff, right?
Or, land ritual wheel.
Yeah, land ritual wheel, right? Like they're going to mull very aggressively to find it. Their deck is purpose built. They've got like 28 lands, right? Like, it's all tutors and it's all gas all the time. If you aren't trying to win the game fast, you're not doing it right. You can't go in and play control. You're either playing some form of like mid-range with a, Timna Crom, which is, still has all those combos in it, or you're playing Rogsai, or you're playing, some sort of Thrasios thing. And so everything is very fast. When everything is very fast, if you're going slow, you're not going to win the game. Your reactive spells are not going to be good. In our format, when it's 30 to 40% of people playing combo, there is opportunity to play aggro, control, and mid-range, and take advantage of the fact that when you aren't the target of the hate because you're not the immediate threat, you have leeway to do so much more.
Yeah.
So the idea that there's like that you're supposed to play combo, or that you should play combo because of time limits and all this other stuff, it doesn't hold water. And what that means is I think too many people are thinking that they have to play combo,
And
when
I
there's a
also
lot of other
talked
stuff to
about
play.
there's a different aspect of it also where the online meta, because so many people are playing with Moxfield, I think there's this ease of interchangeability where it's so easy to grab a meta deck that it artificially narrows the playing field
Yes.
of who's playing what.
Yep.
And
Yep.
I think that as we have more in-paper play, we'll see the same
Yes.
broadening of the meta that we
Yeah.
were talking about earlier, where
Yeah.
we need more pilots to fill out
We
more
do.
decks.
Yeah, and I think that what we're going to see is that meta that we saw there is going to be way more representative because
Yep.
people are going to learn over time that this format is great in part because all the archetypes are good. And so I think what we're going to see is that 1 to 2 combo players in a pod. We might be one of them, right, when we're playing this. And the odds of us being in a 3 combo pod are lower. And in that case, then we can just accept that if we didn't win that game, we kind of got outdrafted. And that's something that a lot of people don't know how to process all the time, but they'll think and think and think and think and think, oh, they'll beat themselves up and self-flagellate and say like, what do I need to play in my deck? No, you just got outdrafted, and that's okay. If you sit down as a gut player and there's a TPI player and 2 combo players, your odds of winning are low because you're gonna have to go at the combo players with the TPI. The TPI and the gut are going to be going for the combo players. And if it comes down to you and the TPI can block forever. They're just going to outgrind you. They're going to cast their, thing, and you just got outdrafted, and that's okay, right? Like
on a similar vein, so I've said a few times in other places that I don't think that Vizkopa can survive well as a super known meta deck. Like if it were in the place of a Gretchen and Gut sits down at the table and says, I'm coming for you first, I don't think Vizkopa survives well. If you use your removal immediately on Gut, then if there's a mix of other combat decks at the table, I think you just get forced into this corner where you have to use your life gain more proactively to stay alive, and it means you have less resources to combo, and you just get beat down.
Now that's something I can speak to directly because I've suffered from this a lot. That is not our fault, and it's it's a product, and it's a product.
I'm not saying it's our fault.
It's a product of bad target priority. Something that I've experienced a lot is players saying I can't win the game late. They think that they can't win the game late game against a mid-range or a control deck, and that isn't entirely true. I've lost games to Gut playing THROTTLE Parasite. I've lost games to Gut playing TPI. The thing is that if an aggro player if there's 2 combo decks and one of them's Gretchen and one of them's us, and the Gut player comes after us,
I wasn't necessarily saying there was another combo.
Sure.
I just mean whatever the scenario.
So if there's just us, yeah. Okay. Yeah. So if it's just us, only us is the combo.
Yeah. Or it's a scenario where when I played with Puzzle where he had an awful draw and didn't have blue mana for many turns. Whatever the scenario is, if the Gut player decides we are target number 1, I think it puts us in an extremely bad place. And that's part of why I don't think Vizkopa can be the top of meta combo deck like the Simic value engines are right now. But I think once the meta gets more representative, I think it fares better once things spread out again.
Yeah. Which it's already doing, and it's been doing for a long time. So I think the long-term prospects are very good, and I still think the short-term prospects are very good for this deck too. And look, WotC loves permanents that gain us life. There is a future.
Have another egg.
There is a future for this deck where maybe you don't play big life gain spells. Maybe it's all onboard food. Maybe it's all onboard rocks that drew you a card. Because what's better than Congregate is a potion of healing that costs 1 to activate that drew you a card. Because then you're actually moving through your deck. You're getting more resources, and it's uncounterable because nobody ever counters a Lembas. Nobody counters a potion of healing, but they will counter a Congregate. You know what I mean? So I think in general, we're looking at a deck that has massive long-term potential and is probably just perfectly fine right now in the meta.
Yeah.
But with that, I do want to take an opportunity here to do a quick shout out as we've got a moment here and my attention. I want to bring up our Patreon here. Clay and I have a Patreon for the common connoisseurs where you can become a member and you can contribute to these kinds of conversations where even on a day where I'm tired, we were able to bring on somebody who's really great. And you see Brad Drakv there. I'm so sorry, man. I didn't update your name again. Everybody here knows the Scarecrow. It's just like
Yeah.
it's the little things. I have like 12 of these interfaces, and sometimes I log in, it's been 2 hours, and it's like, there's Brad Drakv. Great. Okay, cool.
Yeah. I mean,
But
I can't really blame you with the breakneck pace that you all put out content at. It's incredible.
there's a world where if Clay and I were sufficiently supported to really take this on as like
Yep.
a part-time or a full-time job, where we could be cranking out cPDH content every single day,
Yeah.
because I have such a massive backlog of content. And it's with
I
that.
joke with my I
Mhm.
joke with my wife that I already do enough with online Magic stuff that I could make it a full-time
Oh
job.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
like with the way I interact with social media,
Yeah,
it's
yeah.
just very labor intensive. Just trying to reach into all the corners of the web and talk to people.
Dude, it's huge. I mean, you do a ton of work for it. You're out there spreading the word on Reddit and engaging people on Discord and like reposting my stuff too, which is something people probably don't see. But like, yeah, like when I miss
Yeah.
something, you're there reposting it on Reddit, and that's
Or
huge. And
like the Twitter people that have no presence on Reddit, like Mythic Gaming TV is one I've been doing a lot of recently.
that's great. And one of the ways that you can make that reality happen for people like me, people like Scarecrow, if eventually you had some sort of a Patreon, and other content creators, is contributing a very small amount of money a month to support us on Patreon. And so I really like to encourage people, start at that $1 a month level, right? Or sorry, $2 a month level. This is an amazing way to get your foot in the door. You're going to get access to the exclusive part of the Discord, which increasingly is where I'm posting my hot tech. So the first people that learned about this cycling stuff that I've been doing, where I'm pairing Reaping the Graves, Wander in Death, Blood Fountain, these lands that get things back from the graveyard, or if you're in white, you're playing Breath of Life, False Defeat, Resurrection, Late to Dinner to reanimate these things. I didn't post it in general. That was something I posted to the Patrons in the exclusive section of the Discord, because I really want to reward people who are doing something small, like half the cost of a cup of coffee every month, to support what we're doing and to make this a sustainable longevity, with a sustainable project with longevity. I think about it all the time. Like, how awesome would it be if we had a whole cadre of creators who are all getting small amounts of money from a lot of different people in such a way that they could do a part-time job instead of a full-time job. I'm currently working 40 hours a week, and then I'm doing this channel, and it's summer and I have a life. So, and that's not to, there's just a lot of really good ways to support people. So this is how we do it. We have the connoisseur level, we have the dilettante, we have aficionado. The aficionado level is a premium tier. You get member shoutouts, exclusive access to the Discord, like the other ones. You get access to early videos that Clay will post for our gameplay. You get to vote on our Let's Build once a month, and that's something we're working on implementing. It's been a bit hectic, so it's hard to integrate that. But that's something that we're going to have in the next coming months, where you're going to be able to vote on Let's Builds. And we've had it actually in the past. We just haven't had it super consistent, where you get to decide which commander we're going to build around. We also get access to all these templates here. All these templates that you see, these are things that I make that I will give to you with your name on it and your social media stuff, whether it's this one right here, whether it's a display capture so you can share you and your friends playing, whether it's you and another friend that you want to make your own content, whether you want to do your own deck building, whether you want to have your own channel. Allow you to play on Moxfield playtest in a really clean way. And I will give all these to you if you even did a single month of being an aficionado through the channel. We also have a $20 and a $50 level, which include private coaching every single month from me. Soon, we're also going to open up a website where I'm going to be doing coaching and deck building. I've already started doing it for some people, but we're going to have options for people to be on live stream, taking a deck and making it great, starting from scratch or modifying it. Or I can even sit there and I can backseat you during a game where nobody else can hear, but I'm like in the background on a Zoom call, and we can play through your stuff to become a better player. So all these are ways that you can support. I ask that you go and take a look and see if there's a way that you can support Clay and I in this mission to expand the awareness around PDH, but also to deepen our understanding of it through great conversations like this. Now, what comes with that, of course, is that we always like to thank the people who contribute to the channel. So let me do a quick shout out to all the wonderful patrons we have. See if I can find it really quick here. Audience, my page, gotta find it. The interface for Patreon has changed a little bit here. Where are they? Insights? Oh my God, Clay, help me. Where? Oh, this is so funny. It's there. Let's see, messages, payouts, insights, audience. Okay, yeah, I guess it's under audience. Yeah. Okay, so we've got the PDH pod, we've got Sanctuary PDH, we've got Jack, we've got Eric, we've got Adgen, Jerry, Zach, Scooby. Wait, what? Oh. Oh, wow, cool. Zach has upgraded. That's wonderful. Thank you, Zach. Scooby, Chris, Mizu, William, Paul, Corey, Derek, Devin, Ian, Bobby, Jin Shooting Star, and our longest running patron, Noyark. So thank you all so much for your contributions. You all make the wheels go round on this project, and I really, really, from the bottom of my heart, appreciate this so much. I was having a real heart-to-heart conversation at the festival I was at recently, and we were talking about valuing ourselves, and the feeling that I got when I was basically said no to the local meta that I was running because they weren't compensating me, and it was a usurious relationship where I was getting used. And I said, what if I asked my channel and my people to pay me? And on day 2, we had 11 patrons. It was like such a validating thing. And that alone is why the quality of the content and the consistency has continued to increase. So thank you all for contributing. With that, I also want to give a huge shout out and a thank you to you, Scarecrow. Thank you for coming and joining us. You're a legend. This deck that you brought to the tournament has brought something into the light that was in the dark. And your tournament performance was incredibly impressive. And I really appreciate you being here and contributing your time to everyone who's benefiting from your insight and your wisdom and your knowledge on PDH.
Happy to be here, and I absolutely loved the week and a half of us talking about this deck leading up to this, and I'm really happy that we got to laboriously get it all down to where we can share it with other people, you know, the handful of people that take the time to trudge through 2.5 hours of us talking about this deck.
I mean, this is the deep dive. This is the sauce. Like, you know, you got to go digging for gold, and digging for gold is time consuming and challenging. And so, you know, for folks of you out there who have stuck with the stream for this entire time, good on you. You're really, you know, putting the work in to learn about what's available in the format, and you're getting it from, you know, the people that we bring onto this are top tier, amazing deck builders, and it's always an honor to have someone like you on. And I'm also really grateful, on a softer note, to be your friend. I mean, the fact is, like, everybody who was in that house came in as content creators in the same space, and we left as friends. And that was the most exciting thing about the whole weekend. You know, it was really special for me. So so thank you.
Yeah, it was a blast getting to meet everyone. Like, I don't think I heard anyone having negative feelings about anyone they met. It was amazing.
All positive, all gas, no brakes. All right. Well, with that, connoisseurs of fine common cardboard, thank you so much for being here. Make sure to like and subscribe if you're enjoying the content. Hit the bell icon for notifications if you want to know when we're playing games live that are unscheduled. And make sure to check out the Patreon at patreon.com/commonconnoisseurs if you want to find a way to contribute to this project and to thank us for our work. So I hope you all have a great rest of your day wherever you are in the world, and we'll catch you on the battlefield. Peace.
Have a good one.